Roll call. Michael.
Carrie.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Michael Savoy.
Jose Campos.
George Fowler. Mark Silverman.
Nancy Corrigan.
Mary Jiang.
Dan Jacobson.
Alicia Burhow.
Okay, we have a quorum. So we have established, so then I wanted to, first item of business is give some comments on the Board of Accountancy sunset review. Since the CBA in January 17th, 2019, staff continue their diligent efforts to advocate for the CBA priorities during its sunset review through numerous discussions with the legislature. In early February 2019, Executive Officer Patty Bowers and Information and Planning Officer Aaron Bone met with the offices of 27 of the 27 legislatures who sit on the committee to explain the CBA's key accomplishments since the prior sunset review and advocate for the requests discussed in the sunset report. On Thursday, February 14th, the CBA President, George Familette, Vice President Mark Silverman, and Executive Officer Patty Bowers participated in a mock sunset hearing hosted by the DCA. The CBA representatives gave prepared remarks to the DCA staff who acted as legislators in the simulated environment. During the mock hearing, DCA staff posed questions to the CBA representatives on a variety of topics. Then, on Tuesday, February 26th, the CBA sunset hearing was held at the state capitol. President Familette provided an overview of the CBA's history and mission, discussed the CBA's business modernization project. Vice President Silverman spoke about the CBA request to increase the statutory maximum amount for its license renewal and initial permit fees from $250 to $500. Executive Officer Patty Bowers reviewed the CBA's requests for new permanent staff and its proposal regarding Assembly Bill 2138, which recast the authority for the CBA to consider an applicant's history of criminal activity or unprofessional conduct. During the March 22nd, the March 21st, 22nd, 2019 meeting, the CBA will be asked to approve responses to the question posed by the committee and consider a position on Assembly Bill 1521, which would extend CBA's sunset date to January 1, 2024. Next steps in the CBA sunset review. Following the submission of the CBA responses to the questions proposed by the committee, AB 1521 will be amended to include additional provisions related to the CBA's request contained within its sunset report. Then in April 2019, AB 1521 is expected to be heard in the Assembly. After that hearing, the bill will continue through the legislative process. Staff will continue to advocate for the CBA through its next steps and provide timely updates to the CBA on key developments. Questions, comments?
I heard you did a great job.
Yeah, I just want to commend staff for preparing us for the hearing in a very effective manner, and there was great pride among all of us here the way we're regarded by both DCA and the legislature, and staff deserves great credit for that.
And I would like to thank the staff as well. It was a large undertaking, and I think it went quite well in our discussions with the Joint Committee. Thank you.
And if I could just add, and thank you for those words, I'd like to just add a special acknowledgement to two of the staff. First, to Dominic Franzella, who was the primary drafter of our Sunset Review Report, which was very well received and I think was one of the best that they received, not just this year, but in history. And then the second to Aaron Bone, who was so instrumental in connecting with all of the legislators, the staff in his work. He was at the Capitol, I don't know how many hours, but he was over there a lot. And so I thought it was really noteworthy that the chair during our hearing, or at the conclusion of our hearing, made a point to say the lack of questions that we received wasn't because of a lack of importance, it was the evidence of all the work that we did leading up to sunset review. And so it was a great team effort. And then just finally, my appreciation to DCA. We've mentioned a couple times the mock hearing. They did provide a mock hearing in advance, and President Famelot, Vice President Silverman, and myself attended that. And DCA was not kind. They peppered us with some really, really tough questions. And so, but it was very helpful, and it really allowed us to make sure that going into that hearing, had we received any of those difficult questions, we were very well prepared for them. So just thanks to everyone for that great teamwork.
Okay, any other comments?
Yeah, I had a question. So, Patty, this sunset review that you both all went through, is other boards have go through that same rigorous, I mean, they have to prepare and questioning, and you find that it's worthwhile do it every 4 years?
I would say yes. The typical is every 4 years for most boards, and all of the boards, bureaus, and the department itself is subject to that sunset review process. When you only go up every 4 years, that's an indication often that you're doing okay. If you're asked to come back sooner, then that usually is because there's some concern and they want you to come back and clarify or report on corrective actions that you're taking sooner rather than later. So the fact we go every 4 years, I think, is a compliment.
Okay, I think we're going to go on to item 1B, and the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy Committee Interest Form. And I think just, I will be expeditious in my comments, but the CBA members' participation and input gives California a voice in critical areas relating to consumer protection and the accounting profession, including the Uniform CPA examination, changes to the Uniform Accountancy Act, NASBA strategic plan, and updates to the accountancy licensing database. NASBA committee recruitment process for the 2019-2020 committee cycle began on February 27, 2019. A listing of committee and their respective charges is included as an attachment. I think what we wanted to do should basically any CBA members, I guess, be interested, they can express their interest in one of the committees if they so desire. So with that, I'll open it up for questions or comments. Being none, please look at the attachment and express your interest. And with that, we will move on to item 1C. And I think we were going to have Rebecca Reed cover the State Board of Accountancy recommendations.
Good afternoon. Agenda item 1C provides members with information regarding the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, or NASBA, nominating committees. Request for recommendations for all state boards to serve as vice chair for the 2019-2020 year. NASBA stated that to be eligible to serve as vice chair, an individual must have served as a director at large or regional director for a minimum of 2 years, but need not to be a current member of the board of directors at the time of his or her election. The deadline to submit recommendations to serve as the NASBA vice chair is April 16, 2019. And at this time, the CBA has not received any requests for support from individuals seeking to serve as vice chair.
Okay. Thank you. The next item we had on the agenda is we were going to get an update. There is no update. Okay. We're going to make some progress. And I I think right now, we're going to skip the next item because Karen is not going to be here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Vice President, Mark Silverman, and he is going to give us the report of the Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm pleased to present a number of...
Mr. Silverman?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I'm pleased to present a number of candidates for appointment or reappointment to a number of committees. I'm trying to do this efficiently and quickly so that we aggregate some of them by committee. This item is to recommend the following: the appointment of David L. Kroll, CPA, and Chris Techmeyer, CPA, and the reappointment of Doug Aguilera, CPA, William Donnelly, CPA, and Thomas Gilbert, CPA, to the Enforcement Advisory Committee. The Enforcement Advisory Committee assists the CBA in an advisory capacity with enforcement activities. This includes reviewing closed investigation files, providing technical guidance on open investigations, and participating in investigative hearings. I've conferred with the CBA Executive Officer to verify that the individuals have met the appropriate requirements for license renewal and have demonstrated the skills and knowledge to serve in a leadership capacity on the Enforcement Advisory Committee. Therefore, I recommend that David Kroll, Chris Techmeyer be appointed as members of the EAC effective March 21st, 2019 through March 31st, 2021, unless any member would like to take each appointment individually.
I so move.
I second.
You want to have a motion, President Famlett?
Yeah, so do we have a motion to approve?
Yes, I moved and
Yeah.
Jose
Okay,
seconded.
well, let's have a vote.
Okay, Alicia Burhout,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Family,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
and Mark Silverman.
Yes. Okay, then I'd like to also recommend that Doug Aguilera, William Donnelly, and Thomas Gilbert be reappointed as members of the EAC effective April 1st, 2019 through March 31st, 2021, unless any member would like to take each reappointment
So
individually.
moved.
Second.
Any public comment? Call for a vote?
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
George Family,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
and Alicia Burhout.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay. Next item are appointments and reappointments to the Qualifications Committee. Christian George, CPA, Angela Hanzik, CPA, Cliff J. Liker, CPA, and Jose Palma, CPA. This is to recommend the reappointment of all of them. The QC assists the CBA in its licensure activities by reviewing the experience of applicants for licensure and making recommendations to the board. This includes conducting work paper reviews with the applicant or the employer present to verify that the responses provided are reflective of the requisite experience for licensure. I've conferred with the CBA Executive Officer to verify that each individual has met the appropriate requirements for license renewal and have demonstrated the skills and knowledge to serve as a member on the QC. Therefore, I recommend Christian George, Angela Hanzik, Cliff Liker, and Jose Palma be reappointed to the QC effective April 1st, 2019 through March 31st, 2021, unless any member would like to take each reappointment individually.
I move approval.
I second that.
Any comments from the public? Let's have a vote.
Alicia Burhout,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Family,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
And Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, final item is regarding the Peer Review Oversight Committee. It's to recommend the following reappointment of Jeffrey DeLizer, CPA, Kevin Harper, CPA, and Sharon Selleck, CPA, to the PROC. The PROC assists the CBA in an advisory capacity in its oversight of the peer review program. As with all appointments and reappointments, I have verified that the individuals have met the requirements for license renewal and have demonstrated the skills and knowledge to serve as a member on the PROC. Therefore, I recommend that Jeffrey DeLizer, Kevin Harper, and Sharon Selleck be reappointed to the PROC effective April 1st, 2019 through March 31st, 2021, unless any member would like to take each reappointment
Move
individually.
to approve.
Second.
Any comments from the public? With none, let's have a vote.
Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Mary Jiang.
Yes.
George Pamela.
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan.
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
And Alicia Burhow.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, well, that concludes the report of the Vice President. Thank you. I think we're going to skip 3 and go to 4, report of the Executive Officer, and we'll go from there.
Very briefly, Mr. President, just to point out a couple of items from the Communications and Outreach Report. Is that better? There we go. It's very soft. We have a busy spring outreach season ahead of us, members. Next month, we look forward to having Mr. Savoy speak at CSU San Bernardino at an upcoming outreach event. Been partnering with Cal CPA on 3 different community college events, similar to the one that Ms. Corrigan spoke at late last year, April 26th, May 3rd, and there's another date I don't have in front of me. I'll be working with the president to seek members who could speak at those events on behalf of the CBA. California Financial Literacy Month is coming up next month, and staff will be attending an event at this state capitol next month. And then pleased to report the progress on our meeting that we've been putting together at Cal Poly Pomona, and had some very productive, good progress on the contracting front. And so look forward to having those details wrapped up soon and have a presentation to give you a further update at the next board meeting. That concludes my remarks, Mr. President. Happy to take any questions.
Okay.
Jason Fox with Cal CPA. I just want to acknowledge the board and thank the board and the staff for all of the work on the outreach events. We've really ramped these up the last couple of years. I think we've gotten great positive reviews from the students and the candidates as they go into the pathways. So I appreciate, I know it takes a lot of time and energy to put these together, so we appreciate the support and working together on this.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, we're going to skip to our last item of the cure before lunch, but we're going to get item 5A, and we're going to get a report from the Enforcement Advisory Committee. Joseph Rosenbaum is going to provide us a report. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for rescheduling. The Enforcement Advisory Committee held its last meeting on February 7 in Burbank. At our meeting, members reviewed 10 closed case files. The EAC also held 2 investigative hearings. Our next meeting will be held on May 2nd in Anaheim. That concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Nice job.
Thank you very much. I think from a scheduling perspective, we need to be back at 1:30 time certain. And so we will adjourn and return at 1:30 to begin. I believe we're going to have a hearing, so we need to make sure that we're all back and have a quorum. Thank you. Ahead and get started here by establishing a quorum. If we could start on my right.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Michael Savoy.
Jose Campos.
George Familet.
Mark Silverman.
Nancy Corrigan.
Mary Jiang.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Alicia Burhow.
Okay, we have established a quorum. With that, we are going to go into our petition hearing in the matter of Hawkins. I'm going to turn it over to the judge and let him control the proceedings from here. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, we'll go on the record for the court reporter. This is the matter of the petition for reinstatement of a revoked license of Raymond Hawkins. It's case 2019-01-0036. Today's date, March 21st, 2019. The hearing is being held before a quorum of the California Board of Accountancy. Adam Berg, Administrative Law Judge from the state's Office of Administrative Hearings, will be presiding over this matter. Will counsel for the Attorney General's office enter your appearance, please?
Yes, good afternoon, Your Honor, and members of the board. Deputy Attorney General Carl Sani, appearing on behalf of the Attorney General in this matter in accordance with Business and Professions Code Section 5115. Sure, the lights on.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sani. Mr. Hawkins, good afternoon to you.
Thank you, sir.
You are representing yourself today?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, and I believe Mr. Sani just gave you a brief overview of what's going to occur today. After he gives a quick presentation to the board, you'll be your opportunity to tell the board why you believe that your license should be reinstated.
Yes, sir.
All right, if you have any questions that come up during the hearing, let me know. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Mr. Sani.
Great, thank you, Your Honor. Judge Berg and members of the board, I would like to mark for identification and offer into evidence as Exhibit 1 the original petition packet with accompanying documents. The board members and the petitioner have been provided with a copy of the same set of this exhibit. It totals 40 pages. The pages have been Bates numbered as RRH-PET001 to 0040. And I may refer to the pages as simply PET followed by the page number. This matter is a petition for reinstatement of the revoked certificate of Mr. Hawkins. I will briefly refer the members, in the interest of brevity, to the memorandum of Mr. Franzella dated January 29th. That is found at PET 1 and 2, which quickly summarizes this case. Mr. Hawkins was previously disciplined by the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, and as a consequence of the discipline that he received in that proceeding before the PCAOB, Mr. Hawkins' license was disciplined and an accusation was filed by the California Board of Accountancy that alleged, first, that there was a basis for discipline as a consequence of having been disciplined by the PCAOB, and two, Mr. Hawkins failed to notify the CBA of the PCAOB discipline within the 30-day statutory time frame, and that Mr. Hawkins continued to advertise his services on the LinkedIn website after his license was expired. Thereafter, Mr. Hawkins failed to timely respond to the accusation, and his default was taken. The default is found at pages PET 31 to 35, and the accusation, which is the subject of the default, is found at pages PET 24 to 30. Mr. Hawkins has submitted a petition. He has also submitted, I believe, a total of 9 reference letters and is prepared to give testimony here today. Mr. Hawkins was originally licensed in 1991 and bears the license number 55450, and his license history for the board members' review is found at pages PET 36 to 37. At this point, Your Honor, we would request that the witness be sworn in.
Okay. Mr. Hawkins, if you raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. You swear or affirm the testimony you'll be giving will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay, thank you. All right. This is your opportunity to tell the board why you believe that your license or certificate should be reinstated. Just make sure is the green light on there.
The green light's on.
Okay.
I've been in public accounting since November 7th,
not on.
1977.
Okay, we're having a little trouble hearing you down this end. Maybe pull it a little closer to you right there.
I've been in public accounting since November the 7th, 1977. I can't think of anything that I would rather do than public accounting. I love what I do for a living. I feel I'm very good at it. I have, I'm proud of my career. I totally and 100% admit all of the allegations against me. I have no dispute. I wish things had been different and I had answered or known about the letter that I was mailed on October 2016. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Sani. Questions?
Just to expand on that, I assume that you adopt as part of your statement all the matters that are set forth in your petition. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you've described the details and the problems that you dealt with in the course of your recent career at the time of the PCAOB discipline and thereafter in China?
Yes, sir.
And they're all true and accurate?
Yes, sir, they are.
Okay. And you acknowledge that the discipline that the CBA imposed was not just for failure to notify the CBA, but was also for the underlying matters before the PCAOB, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you don't dispute any of those, correct?
Absolutely not.
Let me ask you, your packet does not contain any continuing education certificates. Have you done any continuing education since your license was lost? And what is your intentions regarding continuing education?
I have not done any continuing professional education. My intention is to do that. I frankly just haven't been in a financial position to do that.
If the board determines to grant your petition, would you agree that it would be a reasonable term that your license would not become active and effective until such time as you complied with all the continuing education requirements in the CBA's regulations?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm assuming, and I don't know if anybody here knows the answer, but I'm assuming that I have to take at least 80 hours, and because it's been a while, do I need to take more than 80 hours? I just need an answer for that.
And my suggestion is that that's an issue that if your petition is granted, you can communicate with the staff. I believe it's Reg 87 that deals with the continuing education requirements. And you can review Regulation 87, which sets forth the requirements of compliance with all continuing education requirements. Do you intend in the future to perform any type of audit engagements?
On my own, no.
And one question, the board has the power to either require supervised practice or to restrict your practice from performing audits. Do you have any feelings about whether or not you want to be subjected to those restrictions? And that's not to suggest that it would be necessary, but what would your thoughts be on having your practice restricted from performing a test type of engagements?
With all due respect to the board and their decisions, of course I will abide by them. But I believe that my record shows that I am quite capable of completing audits and signing off and honoring the standards of the profession.
If in fact the board does not require any restriction on your ability to perform attest engagements or supervised practice, would you nonetheless ensure that you would consult with another experienced CPA before you issue any further audits?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Have you, by the way, participated in any audits as a non-CPA assisting another CPA since your license was lost?
No, I have not.
I have no further questions at this time.
All right, questions from the board, if you would just state your name so we get that for the court reporter.
Hi, good afternoon. Alicia Burhow with the Board of Accountancy. So on your petition, it says you're retired. Is that correct? Or, okay, so what would you
Pretty
like?
much.
What would you like to do with your license, given that you're retired? What type of tax or what kind of tax practice would you like to do?
I would like to stay away from tax
Okay.
completely.
So I guess I should say, what would you like to do with your license if it's reinstated, given that you're retired?
I would like to do some management consulting, maybe consulting on auditing. I've been in this business for over 40 years. And like I said at the opening, I love what I do for a living. And I feel, and I think the recommendation letters that I have show that I'm pretty good and pretty well respected in this field. And I would appreciate that my legacy not be a revoked certificate. I don't have a burning desire to go out and perform audits on my own. The reason I haven't paid for my CPE is because I can't find a job.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody in public accounting that'll touch me. And I love public accounting. I can't imagine ever doing anything different.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
No questions, thank you.
No question at this point.
No questions.
No questions.
No questions.
Jose Campos. So one avenue to demonstrating your proficiency in accounting, auditing, consulting is to work under the employ of a CPA. Have you attempted to do so?
Yes, sir. Quite a few times.
And why is it that that hasn't worked out? Is it purely because of the prior discipline on your license?
I was told by two CPA firms that, come back and talk to them when the state board has reinstated my certificate. I think the other thing has to do with the fact that I've spent so much time out on my own that, people are afraid of integrating somebody that's had 30 years of, in essence, sole practitioner into the firm. The other thing is, I've run across some people just don't want to hire fat old white men.
No further
I've run
questions.
across that.
Thank you.
Michael Savoy. So if your license is reinstated, would you attempt to go back to some of these firms that wanted you to do that? Or would you attempt to open a sole practice, whether it's consulting or small audits, but then seek oversight as a concurrent auditor?
I don't want to go back into practice again. I'm 67 years old. I'm not psychologically or emotionally equipped to start from scratch anymore. I did that before. I've done that a few times in the past. And I just can't do it. I just like, being in public accounting. I don't have a burning desire to be a partner. I don't have a burning desire to be a senior manager. But, I love to be in public accounting. I love the arena. I love teaching the staff. I don't think I could sit and tick and tie like a junior would, but no, I don't have any desire whatsoever to go back into practice for myself. Now, I do some Upwork. I don't know if any of you know what Upwork is, but I've done some Upwork projects. I do those. In fact, late last night I just flew in, spent 3 days in Chicago doing some due diligence work. I will continue to do that, but I don't want to open up.
Thank you. No further questions.
No questions.
All right, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 1 will be received. Does the Attorney General have a position?
No, Your Honor. Nothing specific
Okay.
on this matter. Thank you.
All right, any final remarks that you would like to make for the board, Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to present myself.
All right, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing in this matter. The record's closed. The board will enter closed session, and you will receive a decision in the mail shortly. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Back to you.
Okay, we're going to go back into session. We get to reestablish a quorum again, so if we can do the exercise starting on my right.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Michael Savoy.
Jose Campos.
George Familette.
Mark Silverman.
Nancy Corrigan.
Mary Jiang.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Dan Jacobson.
Alicia Burhow.
Okay, we have a quorum. Okay, our first order of business, we're going to go to item 3, and we're going to get the report of the Secretary Treasurer, and Ms. Corrigan will provide us that report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. And I know the agenda item lists it as one item, but we're actually going to break it into 2 components. The first part, I'm going to give an update on the 2017-18 financial information, as well as go through 2018-19. The second part will be a presentation by our Assistant Executive Officer, Deanne Pierce, regarding our fund condition and possible fee changes. So we'll break that into 2 components. So going and in the Secretary Treasurer's report that you have, and on the second page, you'll see the financial information. But at this point on 2017 and 18, information is preliminary. We're still waiting for information, delays, again related to transitional issues with the fiscal accounting software. So that is still pending, and staff are on that, doing everything they can do to solicit that information. So moving along then to column 5, basically is the 6 months ended December 31st, 2018. Again, I'm on page 2 of the Secretary Treasurer's report. You can see that we have expended approximately $7 million, or 48% of the budget. The budget item in the highlighted yellow column is the $14,503,000. So we have expended 48% here at halfway through, and with a projected surplus at the end of the year of $20,000, which you can see in that last column. Now, some areas of continuing or ongoing increased expenditures. Definitely the area of temporary help, as we're seeking to replace those with permanent positions, which would also then control permanent staff overtime. Printing and postage, we hope to reduce once the update publication is electronic. We also have down in the area of facilities operations, some increased costs related to the IT server room improvements that had to occur. And an interesting section, I'm just going to point out the highlights and give you a chance to ask questions, but under interagency services, and I'm more than halfway down, we have what's called Consolidated Data Center. That includes the cost of $40,000 for the information technology audit that the California Military Department performed. Now, agencies that maintain their own systems, their own websites, that sort of thing are subject to audits every year. Right now, I guess it's a 4-year requirement for right now. Every other year, the California Military Department will perform that, and in the alternating years, it will be the State Department of Technology. And we do not know what those costs will be. So that's another question within the budget that has to get, resolved here, hopefully sooner than later. A little bit further down, we have what is called exam expenses. These are NASBA special accommodations for exam takers that need special facilities or special whatever in order to take the exam. We don't have a budget item for that, but that has been submitted with a request of $78,000 for that budget line item. So as you can see, some areas need shoring up, and we're doing everything we can do. Hopefully that item will at least be approved and be effective July 1st. So if you move on to, page 3 of the report, you can see the area of enforcement expenditures projected to nearly $1.3 million for the year. Of course, we know that can vary depending on case fluctuation, timing, the nature of the cases that come in. That category includes attorney general costs, office administrative hearings, court reporters, evidence and witness fees, expert consultants, division of investigations, and so costs such as that. If you go to page 4, you can see it a little bit better in comparison to all 3 of the divisions. And this pie, if you will, is allocated based on the number of staff assigned to the division. So you can see licensing at 31% of the pie, administration executive at 26% of the pie, and enforcement at 43%. So it's definitely the biggest share of the pie and very subject to fluctuation depending on what's happening at the time. So given that again, everything is preliminary. We do not have revenue figures yet for 2018-19. So again, this is all hinging on the completion of and working out of bugs within the accounting software that the DCA is dealing with. So if we go on to page 5, which is the fund condition, very important page. Currently, legislatively recommended months in reserve is 24 months. Well, we can see that the preliminary numbers for 17-18 are 21.8 months. Preliminary for 18-19 are 15.7 months, and going on, we can kind of see a decrease as our revenues are flat and our expenses are increasing to accommodate and meet all these needs. And even here, this being preliminary, that second line item near the bottom under expenditures, disbursements, and then 8880 has to do with the system, financial information system. That is fiscal, and we don't have a figure for that going forward. So they're just missing pieces and a little bit of a moving target. But questions like that make it a little bit difficult to complete our work for the board as it pertains to the numbers. But this portion of it, the fund condition, where we are, where we're going, and what we might need in the future as far as fees, will be covered by Ms. Pierce when we're about ready to get to that point. So, Mr. President, that concludes my portion of it. I'm happy to answer questions or have staff available to answer questions that the members may have. And if there are none, then I'll turn it over to Ms. Pierce.
Thank you, Ms. Corrigan. The purpose of this portion of the Secretary-Treasurer report is to discuss the CBA's Accountancy Fund Reserve, which I will refer to as reserve, and discuss the need for a fee increase. Let me start by providing a brief background on the CBA's current and prior fees, as well as its historic reserve levels. As members may be aware, beginning in 2011, the CBA took steps to lower its fees with the goal of reducing the reserve, which at the time was exceeding a statutory limit of 9 months. Prior to any reduction, the license renewal fee was set at $200. When the fee was reduced, it was originally set at $120. However, it was reduced a second time to $50 to further reduce the reserve. In 2015, the CBA attempted to restore the fee back to $200. However, this was not approved due to scheduled repayments of loans from the general fund, and subsequently, the fee returned to the $120 level beginning in July of 2016. The CBA has been operating at a negative cash flow for approximately 8 years. The CBA does not bring in enough revenue to cover its approved expenditure authority. This pulls money from the CBA's reserve and over time has reduced the months in reserve. In January 2018, the CBA approved an increase in its license renewal and initial license fee to $250, which is the statutory maximum. Based on projected revenues and expenditure data available at that time, the $250 fee level would more closely align revenues and expenditures, provide sufficient resources in the reserve for future operations, and progress towards a 24 months in reserve level as recommended by the legislature. Recently, DCA provided the CBA with updated projections, which are included as attachment 1, reflecting the $250 fee level. With these updated projections, the CBA's approved fee increase of $250 for license renewal and initial license does not provide a sufficient revenue stream to address expenditures or build the reserve. As you will notice, the months in reserve level decreases each year. As discussed in the agenda item, the CBA's current and projected expenditures have increased due to various reasons, including implementation of supplemental pension payments, increased employee compensation, benefits, and retirement costs, and budget augmentations to address increased operating expenses, such as enforcement and examination costs, and additional permanent staff. In future years, the CBA expects to see enforcement expenditures and information technology costs continue to increase. Based on these updated projections, the CBA will need to increase the license renewal and initial license fee to an amount greater than $250. As $250 is presently the statutory maximum that can be charged, a regulatory change for an increase would have to occur after the statutory maximum is increased to $500. There is presently a request for this statutory increase in the CBA Sunset Review Report. The CBA is being asked to take action on 2 items relating to a fee increase. The first is whether the CBA should pursue 1 or 2 fee increases, and the second is to identify the increased fee amount. I'll be presenting information on the business modernization project, however, there is no specific action necessary on that. With President Familet's approval, I will discuss these items individually and then ask for the CBA to discuss and take action prior to moving to the next issue.
Okay, please proceed.
Thank you. As previously mentioned, the CBA will need to increase the license renewal and initial license fee to an amount greater than $250 to increase its revenue, ensure it can address expenditures, and build a strong reserve. There are 2 paths the CBA could take to create an increased revenue flow. First is do a single fee increase for an amount greater than $250, which would occur after the statutory maximum has been raised. Or another option is to initiate 2 fee increases, which would include implementing the current pending rulemaking to increase it to $250, and then initiate a second fee increase after the statutory maximum has been raised. I want to discuss the single fee increase first. If the CBA were to initiate a single fee increase, it would take action to withdraw the pending rulemaking, and following the anticipated approval to the increase in the statutory maximum amount on January 1 of 2020, the CBA would initiate a new rulemaking for a license renewal and initial license fee amount greater than $250. There are advantages and disadvantages to both options, as noted on page 3 of the agenda item. However, I would like to mention 2 advantages for a single increase that stand out, which are avoiding changing renewal fee amounts over multiple renewal cycles and that a single fee increase would not create any additional workload for review and approval by the Department of Consumer Affairs, Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, and the Department of Finance. Further, the current administration at Department of Consumer Affairs has indicated it will assist in expediting the process and supports a single fee increase. The second option would be to initiate 2 fee increases. To do this, the pending regulatory fee increase of $250 would continue with an anticipated effective date of January 1, 2021, and then following approval of the legislation to increase the statutory maximum, a second fee increase would be initiated via regulation. As with the first path, there are advantages and disadvantages to this. Most notably, the disadvantages include the creation of multiple increases for licensees, and contrary to the single increase option, would create additional workload for other state agencies that are involved in the regulatory process. The CBA will need to decide whether to implement a single fee increase or 2 fee increases. Before I present information on possible fee levels, I will turn it back over to President Familette for discussion and action regarding whether to pursue a single fee increase or 2 fee increases, and I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Thank you. Questions from members? Yes.
So just to clarify, Deanne, so who, during the sunset review, was it recommended by the legislature or the LAO to increase?
Are you referring to the months in reserve at a 24 level, or are you referring to increase the statutory maximum?
The statutory maximum.
That was a staff recommended.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what, thank you for the clarification.
I think we should cut to the chase, and I hear from staff that the single fee increase is the most effective and doesn't burden the agency or DCA anymore. And I move that we proceed along the single fee increase.
I second the motion.
Yes.
I had a question. So for the CPAs on the board, what would be, because this is not an easy thing. Yeah, I hate increasing fees on anything. I mean, I don't know if you've chatted with some of your folks or you yourselves. I mean, would one or the other be better? I mean, I wish I didn't have to increase fees on anybody.
So, yeah, what is the fee, if you had 2 fees, what would be, like, one might be $250, the next one might be $450 or
Yeah.
$500? Is that,
Yeah, the 2 fee increase option would be to continue pursuing the fee increase we have undergoing review right now to the $250 level.
First.
Would be the first one, and then once the statutory maximum is increased, then we would be doing a second regulatory change to increase the fee again to an amount above $250.
but it's not necessary, it could be any amount, sorry, but not necessarily go double to 500, right?
Yeah, that's yet to be determined by the board.
Yeah. I think for some of the young CPA profession, I think right now it's 120, which is reasonable. But 250, if we raise it to 250, one fee might be reasonable, but to do one giant fee, it's going to be really hard on some of these young professionals. I think 2 steps may be easier. It's just like whenever you get tax increase, they say phase it in rather than hit them all at once.
So I'm certainly not in favor of deciding on fee increases right now. Just one point of clarification. We already approved a $250 fee increase, and that's working its way through whatever process.
Right.
Secondly, we've already asked the legislature for support on increasing the statutory limit, which I support, and obviously we're still waiting to see if that would be an amended piece. And I see the projections, I understand what's happening there, but I'm opposed to betting on the fact that that statutory fee limit's going to change, right? Because you would almost have to take back the last approvals that we did and institute something new, and if they don't approve our statutory limit increase, then you're back to square one. And I think there's just enough runway here to figure some things out. I do think that if we're going to make changes, we should look at the overall fee structure a little more holistically. And I understand that there's some pieces that produce more results because of volume than others. But I think you need to put the exams back on the table. You need to put the other types of fees that we have and do something more broadly as opposed to solely focus on the initial and renewal license pieces. And maybe there's other things we need to think about in terms of our overall expense structure. And I understand the kinds of projections we're making right now, and we're being burdened by things that are not in our control. And I get that piece of it as well, but I'm certainly not prepared to engage in a process of trying to get these fee increases dealt with as of now, is my own view.
George, can I just add, for those of you that don't know, our statutory fee limit has been in existence for about 30 years. So we have not asked to raise that limit in a long, long time. And if you look at inflation and salaries and accountants' fees and so on and so forth, I think we're very much within the realm of reasonableness. And I think we should give ourselves the most flexibility and do it in the most cost-effective way. So with all due respect, Jose, I think we should deal with this. And for those of you that are licensed by other bodies, you know $250 is not a deal killer. And with all due respect to Mary's point, which I think is a good one, you know, you enter the profession and there are costs associated with. Also, look at the litigation that we're dealing with later today and tomorrow. These kinds of things are increasingly coming up, and they cost us money. And these are, whether, I'm not opining on the legitimacy of them, but we're starting to see more aggressive accountants going to court and challenging our decisions. So once more, we need to have this financial reserve.
Also, I think that we're in the process of asking for this now, and I think that we have the support of collaboration with the legislature to make this change right now. It doesn't mean that we have to necessarily raise the fees to the limit right now, but I think that it is it's unwise to bank on the cooperation of the legislature at a later time, were we to be in dire straits and in desperate need of raising the limits. We're in the process, and I think that it puts our body in the best position to be able to deal with issues as they come along. I don't know to what extent also we look to other licensing boards and their fee structures and how they operate and use them as a model for how we license this profession.
If I have some of the costs of other professions and what their renewal fees are, and I'm happy to share that with members now or later in my presentation.
I mean, when I came to the board, we were owed $31.7 million, $31,270,000 to be exact. And to think we got all that money back, and now we're, going down this path is shocking in that nothing stays the same. And putting forth small increases every year is a hell of a lot easier to absorb than coming forth with a huge increase, whether it's homeowners association or anything. You have to pass along costs all the time. Everybody does. We've kind of sat on our laurels, we got our money back plus interest, and now we appear to be having some issues. So I think we need to be proactive in allowing us to raise a little bit all the time, and whatever it takes to get there, we need to start now.
I have a question. As far as getting to the 24 months in reserve that is suggested by the legislature, should we be trying to get there as speedy as possible, or because it seems like if we do one lump sum, we get there a lot faster than if we pieced it out in 2 steps?
Is your microphone on?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. My question is should we focus on trying to make it to 24 months in reserves as speedy as possible? Is that a matter?
I don't think they gave us a specific time frame in terms of to get to the 24 months in reserve level. I think the sooner we do get there, though, it provides a greater level of security to make sure that we have the resources that we need for operating expenses, enforcement expenses, those types of things, but there wasn't a specific time limit that they provided that I'm aware of.
Yeah, but if you have a plan, like I agree with Michael, if you said small increases, say over the next 5 years, here's your projected increases, and I think, like I said, you get there, you don't have to be there in year 1 or 2, if it takes you 5 years to get there, but you show a plan of action. I don't think the legislature is going to fault you for not getting there sooner than later, but I think in the profession, small increases is more palatable than hit them in a big, 100% increase.
Last point I'll make, I mean, just to be clear, we got here because of decisions this board had to make years ago, right? Where at the time, it was not 24 months in reserve, it was 9 months in reserve that people were managing toward. And there was a surplus that we were accumulating. We basically lowered fees from $200 to $50. Right. Talk about going in the complete opposite direction, right? So, and we did it over 2 steps. Right. We went to 120, then we went to 50. If the board had not gone from 120 to 50, we wouldn't really be talking about this situation because the fees would have reverted to $200 at the time. 2 years ago, they would have reverted back. So we've had a give back annually of about $5 to $6 million from our surplus that's been occurring based on those decisions now for multiple years. To think that we should then go all the way over and try to recoup it in very short order, that just does not sound logical. And so I agree that it's a great point. Okay, are we going to have the support to go forward with another regulatory increase at some point in the future? Maybe, maybe not, right? But we would need to put our case forward and go from there. Right now, I think it's more dangerous to withdraw our prior proposal, put something else in there that assumes your statutory limit's going to be achieved. I think that's got more risk to it than, and so going to a single option just doesn't make sense to me.
From the perspective of someone who gets billed each year for a profession, for licensure, just seems from a planning point of view and just from an ease of understanding point of view that changing the amounts is more difficult than paying a fixed amount that, so in other words, if it's $300 one year and then it's $400, well, I'd prefer it be $350. So that I'm used to it, and I know what is in fact going to happen. I have a question, and that is, is there an estimate from staff as to what the one-time raise would be?
So that's actually the second item that we were going to discuss. So if that might help in this deliberation, perhaps we should move on to that. But if I could just clarify one thing on the withdrawal of our pending regulatory package, we wouldn't have to take a formal action to withdraw it. We could hold it. We could continue to work that through the process. And over the next couple weeks, we'll be meeting again with legislative staff and members to talk about the board's increase to its fee cap. And I think in those conversations, we'll probably have a sense of where the legislature is at, because participants in those meetings are the same individuals who really pushed us to get 24 months or close to 24 months in reserve so that we were positioned to handle any large enforcement matter that might come before us. So I think even potentially by the next board meeting by May, we may have updated information on where that legislative support is, any feedback they give us, and then we could, so we don't necessarily have to formally withdraw the pending packet, if that helps.
A quick further clarification. The board approved the language for the fee increase for the regs, but it hasn't been noticed yet. So the actual official rulemaking process hasn't actually started. That starts when the fee increase gets noticed, and then you have an initial 45-day public comment period. We haven't gotten even there yet. So just so you know where we are, really.
Okay, you give us some feedback on how much?
Nobody
No,
seconded
no,
it,
nobody
so,
made a formal
so,
motion.
It died. Oh, did Nancy second it? I'm sorry.
I'm forgetting where we are. Okay, I guess that's correct.
Oh,
You can
okay.
always withdraw the motions if you want.
I'm happy to consider it if, since there's been a second.
Get more information.
Mhm.
So motions withdrawn. Is that what's happening?
Give us the 1 and 2
But we already
fee.
had a motion on the floor.
But what, yeah, couldn't we?
Part of this motion,
Yeah.
because it still is relevant to it, and then we could vote down the motion because of the new information
Right.
that's been provided. It's not an irrelevant discussion.
So, moving on, the board can now consider a fee level to ensure sufficient resources exist for the future. And the proposed fee increases for CBA member consideration ensure the CBA is not operating in a negative cash flow, and then it builds the reserve to reach at or near the 24 months as recommended by the legislature. There are fee scenarios attached. Attachment 2 has 5 pages to it, if you will, and these reflect a single fee increase in $50 increments. Attachment 3 also has 5 pages, and these are fee scenarios that provide 2 consecutive fee increases with the $50 increment format as well. And just to provide a little bit of information on here, on both attachment 2 and attachment 3, on the top, you'll see that there is some highlighted information to kind of guide you with regards to the amount that's being increased and the anticipated effective date. And then in the body of the fund condition statement, the green shaded areas are the projected revenues and expenditures that would be in place after a possible fee increase. And just to be responsive to Ms. Hines' comment, for comparative purposes, did a little bit of research regarding what other professions charge that I wanted to share with you. Dentists pay $650 this is for a 2-year period. Dentists are at $650, physicians at $820, psychologists at $430, contractors at $400, architects at $300, and if I captured this correctly, attorneys are $438. That's for a single year.
Yeah.
And I understand that amount may be increasing as well.
I paid $385 for myself and my associate each last year, or for this year actually, and that was because I take every possible deduction and that there is.
And don't give any contributions to, I don't either.
The attached scenarios only reflect an increase in license renewal and initial licensure fees. The only other fee that may have a material impact on the reserve are those assessed first-time exam applicants for the CPA exam. And right now, exam fees for first-time applicants account for about 6% of the total revenue. The CBA would like to consider other fees as suggested by Mr. Campos. We can provide that, further information on that at the May board meeting. And then I just want to mention that none of the fee scenarios take into consideration costs for the CBA's business modernization project, which is appropriate for where we are in the timeline of that project. To do that today might be premature to attempt to factor in costs for the project, not knowing what those costs may be, and that will have significant flexibility with the project, including the scope of the automation that we decide on. So the CBA will participate in business modernization project decisions as they come up, following our business needs analysis in mid-2022. So staff does not have a recommendation on a particular fee level, but wanted to leave that for board member discussion, and I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Questions?
I have a question to clarify. The scenarios in attachment 2 for a single fee increase, that would require that we remove the current $250 process that we have going right now.
We could do either. We could go forward with the $250 and then implement a second fee increase, or we can kind of do dual tracks and make sure that the legislation gets passed increasing our statutory maximum. And if that occurs, then we can let the $250 withdraw that process and then go forward on a single track.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some flexibility there, and we can wait until, I know legislation is just proposed right now, but we can wait until we get a little bit farther along in the process before we pull back on the $250 if we just want to go the single fee increase route.
And then, pardon me, do we have an anticipated date for when we expect to, for the legislator to approve our statutory maximum request?
So I believe that Mr. Bone could probably answer that question better than me from the legislative perspective.
So with regard to Ms. Bauer's comments earlier, we plan to have some discussions, not a date's been set firmly, but in early April to meet with committee staff where we'll hear more from them regarding how they're feeling about the fee issue and our fund condition and related elements. But so hopefully we'll get some informal indication of at least how the staff are feeling. And then it could be any time thereafter that the bill is amended. Subsequent to those discussions. The timing of that's uncertain. You know, I'm sure we'd love to be able to bring something back to the May board meeting for the board to consider, but that's to be determined.
Thank you.
If I could,
So, and I might just, one additional clarification on the meeting with legislative staff. That discussion is to revisit what we've asked for, and that's to raise our statutory cap. And every indication that we receive, there's support for that, because looking at where we're at fiscally, it would make sense to do that. And so I can't presume to know what the outcome's going to be, but I would be surprised if there wasn't support to raise our fee cap to some level, whether it's 500 or it's 400. But I think that we could anticipate that it will go above the 250. I think another consideration in those discussions, there are other boards who have their fees set in legislation, so it's sort of the floor, and it says the board shall charge, let me just say hypothetically, $300 for its renewal fees, not to exceed 24 months in reserve. And so I think knowing that there are other model language out there where the fee floor is set, it wouldn't surprise me if that dialogue doesn't also occur in our conversations.
Yes.
So, given that, that changes what I was going to ask. So, given that scenario, it would make sense if we were allowed to request the floor and then with authority to raise it, but based upon a variety of issues or, circumstances that we could take into consideration, and then set our fee schedule accordingly, whether we wanted to, phase it in or whether we wanted to do one lump pop. The point would be just to go to the legislature one time to change what our statutory fees, limits are, and then as a board or within our agency, determine how we would roll that out or how we would implement that?
That is one option, but that does give then the control of setting your fees to the legislature, and then that goes through the process. Right now, if this language is incorporated into our sunset bill, then if there is disagreement with that floor that is set legislatively, then that's something that we would have to face. And so I would suggest that that might be a last resort as opposed to our first choice.
Can I ask a clarifier on this floor concept? I mean, you would, if your fee was above the floor at, say, $350, and then you wanted to go to $400, would you have the unilateral right to change that? You'd still have to go through this same regulatory process to increase each time. So I'm not so sure how much more flexibility that gives you. It's not you still have to
Giving up a lot to get
the
no
process.
more, with not much flexibility.
I mean, true, and I agree with that statement, but the only thing that I feel like would be a benefit initially would be that if the floor of your fees is higher than what it is now, than what your maximum is now, then you can basically immediately, as soon as that bill goes into effect, start charging that fee. Because your regs cannot contradict
point.
what's in statute. So it kind of jumps you ahead past that rulemaking process, but every other time subsequently, you would have to do a rulemaking.
So if it gets set at $255, it doesn't help you a whole heck of beans. Okay.
Well, yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm clear as to what the process is. So whatever we ask for now, we have to ask for what we want now. Like, we can't have flexibility as to how we phase in the fees. We have to go in basically saying what we want to have happen, because if we change the fees at any point, we have to go back and ask for permission. Or and I'm saying, for example, the scenario on attachment 3, page 3, attachment 3, a $250 fee increase in 2021 and a $400 fee increase in 2022. That's a big jump in 1 year. And, I think that's, that makes me uncomfortable to approve, and I could see how the legislature would be uncomfortable with that also. Are we saying we have to ask for $250 and $400 now? Or if we were to say we would like to increase the statutory maximum to $400, but we'll phase it in? Like, do we have flexibility as to when we could phase that, those fee increases in? That's what I want to be clear about.
Well, I want to just clarify one thing. We're asking, there's kind of two different things going on here. The first is we need to get the statutory flexibility to increase the license renewal fee. So right now, the legislature in the statute, it says $250, and we have a request to raise that to $500.
Okay.
That's the 30-year thing that I
Yeah.
was
Yeah,
stating.
so once that's in place, then we essentially would have, presuming that would get in place, we would essentially have flexibility from no fee to $500. To set that fee, we would have to go through the regulatory process.
We still have
Yeah.
to do that, okay.
In terms of, and I think this might have been your second part of your question, is when we go forward with a rulemaking, similar to what we did last time, we could have it step
So, you know, we could, like before, I believe what we had was, it was at $50 and then it returned to $120 unless we conducted a fee analysis. And so, so that is a possible structure that could go through. One of the other things that was mentioned in the paper as well, and which may not be a huge issue, but the renewal cycle is over a 2-year period, and so when you have a fee in place for 1 year, that means kind of only half the population is going to realize that particular fee level, and then the other half of the population will be charged a
Right
different
away.
fee level,
Yeah.
so that's another item I wanted to mention as well.
Can I ask a question? So, using the example that Ms. Hines just provided, you know, attachment 3, page 3. So would this be in one rulemaking package? So basically, one rulemaking package, let's just say the statutory maximum gets increased to over $400, or at least $400. So you have one rulemaking package that says effective July 1st, 2021, the fee for whatever will be $250. Effective July 1, 2022, the fee will, for whatever, will be $400. Is that? Because you can do that, and yeah.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
we can do it in one. Right now, the way this is set up is we have a current one going through at $250.
Right.
So this right now assumes two different.
Right, the first one, so maybe this was a bad example, so say it would be 300 and 400.
Yeah.
Then it would be, you could put that in one rulemaking package. And this is, I just need to clarify with you, but I also wanted to make sure the board understands that you can do incremental increases in one reg package, but you have to do it within whatever your statutory maximum is at the time.
One of the other things I just wanted to follow up on from Ms. Bowers is, obviously we can't bank on the statutory maximum getting approved, although it looks very positive, I think. And once we get that, kind of a little bit farther along, perhaps after the meetings that we have in April, it's my understanding that we can actually start beginning to work on those materials. You know, if the board were wanting to go down the single fee increase, as an example, that once we kind of get that agreement or kind of level of comfort with the fee increase going through, we could actually start a lot of the regulatory work now. A lot of proactive communications that Ms. Bowers has had with our current administration, they seem very supportive, as I mentioned, on a single increase. And so a lot of that could be going kind of a dual track. And then once the legislation is signed by the governor in August, September, whenever that occurs, then we could actually start working on the formal process with the Office of Administrative Law. So just to share that.
Yeah, but I think I heard you mention that whatever fee structure that we may come up with, that you're right, it has to be a full 2-year cycle so that not one half pays the lower fee, the other half that renews pays the higher fee. Somewhere. Yeah, somewhere, because we renew every 2 years, but not everybody renew at the same time. Half renew 1 year, the other half another year. So I understand, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I was just sharing that as information,
Right.
certainly not required, but just something to keep in consideration.
Yeah, I think that's important to keep in consideration.
You had mentioned that one regulatory package can have 2 fee increases. Is there any reason one regulatory package would require consecutive years? Could a 2-year interval be an option? Okay, thank you.
And one of the reasons for bringing this before the board at this meeting, as opposed to waiting until the May meeting, is to get a sense of where the board is at on fees. Because again, I do think that in April, when I meet with the legislature, I think that's going to be the focus of the conversation. From our last sunset review, where we were strongly encouraged to have a healthy 24-month reserve, part of that even eliminated the 9-month legislative requirement that we had. And then fast forward to this year in sunset review, where we look at our fund condition and it looks less healthy. And so I do think in April that's going to be part of the conversation. And so to the extent I have a sense of where the board is at, I think that would be helpful in the dialogue with the legislature.
Okay. Well, maybe we can sort of wrap things up a little bit. We had a motion on the table. I don't know if you want to continue with that or if we want to provide another motion.
Could we get a repeat, could we restate the motion?
I'm happy to withdraw it
Could-
if there's a sense that you'd like to look at an alternative.
I just want to be reminded of what the motion is, if we have it.
There was a motion by Mr. Silverman and a second by Mr. Jacobson to do a single fee increase, but the level had not been decided at that point.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I'll
why
say,
don't we
I think
vote
you
on
should.
that
yeah.
to see
Just vote
to-
on it and
if
you
it
can
doesn't pass
go
the-
on if you don't like it. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, well, let's, those in favor?
No, you call the question. Yeah, you say
Oh,
the
roll
call.
call, okay. Public comment, sorry. No public comment?
Oh, those technicalities.
Never mind.
Okay.
Alicia Berghout,
No.
Jose Campos,
No.
Nancy Corrigan,
No.
George Famulett,
No.
Mary Jiang,
No.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
No.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
No.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
and Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Motion did not pass.
Motion doesn't carry, yeah.
My own recommendation would be that we don't need a motion today. That we let the current proposal or the current fee increase that we approved already carry out. We continue our efforts on the statutory limit, and we maybe reassess in May based on deliberations that we get. But my own personal view, obviously, if we feel we need a two-step increase that we need to commit to already, I just don't know that I have sufficient information. And what I mean by that is, I know that a big part of our budget is variable and out of our control, and that is a very difficult situation for staff to be in, because you don't know what's coming at you. Just like as a licensee, you don't know when the heck the increases or the massive decreases might be coming at you, right, for something. And so I would say that if we come back with something that we think about broadly the different terms, and they should, the different programs that we charge for, and there should be some bearing between increases and decreases based on how much effort is it taking our staff to deal with different things, right? What is the relative effort of license renewal, given the automation we're doing? How do we think about that, right? How do we think about the relative cost of processing those between people and IT security and all these other things, to new CPA exam takers, right? And I know the vetting out people's education and all those kinds of things, it takes, there's some relative time, and so there should be some thought to that, so that it's not just being borne by a single group.
I appreciate what you're saying, Jose, and there are a lot of things in the future that will impact things, but I think we're being fiscally irresponsible, in part because of the history that you laid out, where we went abnormally low, and we're trying to dig ourselves out of that hole, and you indicate there's a public relations issue in addition to just acceptance or not of the financial costs. So I think we shouldn't let that $50 that we were at a few years ago color our being fiscally responsible going forward. So I respectfully disagree.
Okay,
Well,
Alicia?
I'm going to let Carrie
Oh,
Ann go first. She was before me.
Carry on.
I do agree with my colleague, Mr. Campos, in that I think that this discussion has provided support that we need more information. And I think that any request to raise fees should be accompanied by details that address some of the issues that he raised, because I think that is important. We want to make sure that if we are raising fees, it's because we need to, not because we are spending the money and we need more money. So I think we do need to make a clearer argument as to why we need to raise the fees. I agree that we need to raise them, but I think that it should be articulated with more details. I am in favor of continuing with it at this time because there is a political element to this as well. The political realities are such that this is something that has been raised to this board now on multiple occasions, and failing to address concerns that are raised by the political forces is at your peril. So I think that it's something that as an organization we should get ourselves right with, and then how we do it can be the dialogue that we have. And we also, in that political calculation, I think need to take into consideration the partnership that we have to have with the legislature and with the administrative bodies in getting something like this passed. So I think that additional discussion and information that's also informed by the meetings that Patty has with the legislature will help to enable us to make a much more informed and better ask of how we implement something that I think is really, it sounds like it's needed. It's just a matter of, how and,
How much.
to what extent we implement it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Comment?
And I'm with you, Mark. Part of me is with you on terms of doing this now and giving the staff, some of that safety net. So, short and sweet, let's be fiscally irresponsible for just 2 months and come back at this at May. Because I do agree, I want to have that $50 increase. That needs to happen first, I feel like, before we have something else. But I agree with Jose. I think we need to have a little bit more information about what this is how this is going to impact us, the staff, our CPAs, et cetera. But I get where you're coming from.
Yes, Dan?
Patty, does our making or not making a decision today either enhance or handicap your discussions in April with the legislature?
No, I don't think waiting for more detail for the May meeting does. I think just having the input from members that they recognize this is an important issue, that they want us to have a healthy reserve, and they understand that expectation, and they need more details. This body needs more details before it decides what that amount is. I think that's sufficient for the conversations in April.
Thank you.
Okay, well, it sounds like we do not require a motion, and the staff have their guidance for our next meeting. And in May, we will look forward to a robust discussion surrounding potential fee increases, as well as areas that could be increased, the base, if you will, and what our options are that we can figure out how to deal fiscally responsibly with our reserves going forward. So, thanks, and we're going to head to the next agenda item, which I have as the Qualifications Committee. Does that make sense in terms of item 5B?
Yes.
Okay. I think, yeah, Ms. Pierce was going to give the update for the Qualifications Committee.
The Qualifications Committee met on January 23rd in Irvine. There was also a subcommittee meeting held on January 16th at the CBA office in Sacramento. At these meetings, there were a total of 7 Section 69 reviews and 1 personal appearance. 5 were recommended for approval of a CPA license and 3 were deferred. Ms. Hines attended the meeting as the board liaison, and so I want to invite her to provide any comments or feedback that she may have.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to participate in the open session of the Qualifications Committee meeting, and at that meeting, the QC members inquired about the status of the Attest Experience form that is moving through the rulemaking process. Ms. Sanchez responded that we should see movement on that regulation this year. I plan to provide an update on the status of the regulation to the QC at the next CBA meeting. And I look forward to, during my next visit with the QC, having an opportunity to sit in on a closed session interview. Thank you.
Okay, and then we were going to move on to item 5C, the Peer Review Oversight Committee, and Mr. DeViser was going to provide an update as well as Mr. Franzella on various aspects of that update.
So thank you and good afternoon. Agenda item 5C1 under the PROC is an educational overview, a quick educational overview of the peer review program. Part of it is just to provide context for, there are several peer review related items in this packet, and for some of the newer members who aren't familiar with peer review, is just to kind of give some color to what peer review is, and I'll keep my remarks brief. This is informational only, and there's no specific action required from the board. Just as context, mandatory peer review took effect in California beginning in January 1, 2010. Peer review is a study of an accounting firm's accounting and auditing work done by an unaffiliated CPA following various professional standards. And the purpose of peer review is to promote quality in the accounting and auditing services provided by licensees, ensuring that they adhere to professional standards. And peer review is a condition for active license renewal, and it's required for all accounting firms, including sole proprietors who perform accounting and auditing service during the preceding 3 years. Attachments 1 and 2 to your materials on this are the statutes and regulations that govern the peer review program in California. And the regulations spell out those licensees that must complete peer review, firm responsibilities and enrollment requirements, reporting requirements to the board, and minimum requirements providers must meet to be approved by the CBA to perform peer reviews in California. Presently, the CBA only recognizes the American Institute of CPAs as the only approved peer review program provider. And the AICPA uses various administering entities throughout the country to administer its program, with Cal CPA acting as the administering entity in California. There are basically two types of peer review: a system review, which focuses on licensees that perform audits and tests the firm's system of quality and control to ensure that the system was designed in accordance with professional standards and complied with by the firm's personnel. The second type is an engagement review, which is focused on firms that perform compilation and review engagements to assess whether or not the engagements were performed in conformity with professional standards. After the peer review is performed, at the conclusion, a peer review will receive one of 3 ratings, and they're described as either pass with deficiency, or substandard, more commonly referred to as fail. On pages 3 and 4, I've highlighted what each rating means as it relates to either a system or engagement review. It's quite lengthy. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on those. Accounting firms are then required to report peer review information to the CBA at time of license renewal on the peer review reporting form, except those who receive a substandard peer review. They're required to submit the peer review within 45 days. The board maintains an active oversight component, which is the PROC, the Peer Review Oversight Committee, which Mr. DeLizer is the chair, and they provide oversight primarily of the administering entity of Cal CPA, but the AICPA program as a whole. I've highlighted their roles and responsibilities on page 5 of your memorandum. With that, I'm turning it back over to the president and happy to answer any questions members may have.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Mr. DeLizer, did you want to give I guess, item 5C2?
C2, yeah.
Okay, great.
The Peer Review Oversight Committee, which I will refer to in the tradition of accounting, I will refer to it as its acronym and pronounce that like it's a real word, the PROC. held its meeting on February 15th at the CBA offices in Sacramento, and I would like to thank the CBA member, our liaison, Ms. Jung, for attending our meeting and providing an overview of the board's meeting in January. Members reported on various oversight activities that took place between our previous meeting in December up to that February meeting. We also reviewed and provided edits and approved the 2018 PROC Annual Report, which is the item that I'll be presenting on next, on the next agenda item. The PROC also provided feedback and next steps regarding the development of a framework to monitor the California peer reviewer population, which Mr. Franzella will present on later in this report. Lastly, we reviewed and discussed a NASBA paper with proposed revisions to the Uniform Accountancy Act's model rules, which was discussed this morning in the Committee on Professional Conduct's meeting. Our next PROC meeting will be held May 3rd at the CBA office in Sacramento. Are there any questions?
Okay.
Hearing none, I will move on to the next agenda item, item 5C3, which is the presentation of our annual report. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my fellow PROC members for their dedication and hard work over the past year, as well as to thank CBA staff for the large amount of work that goes into drafting and editing this report. The annual report includes information on various activities, the accomplishments, and information on the oversight functions performed by the PROC during 2018. And in an effort to ensure clarity and readability of the report, the PROC performed a significant overhaul for CBA consideration. The primary shift simplified the presentation of the oversight functions performed by the PROC into three main areas that are within the annual report. The first is the PROC observed activities. The second is the peer review related reports and publications that are reviewed by the PROC. And then the third section discusses other oversight activities that are done by the committee. In 2018, we undertook several important initiatives which are highlighted in the report to improve the oversight of the peer review program. These initiatives included oversight procedures of the California Society of CPAs and their administration of the AICPA's peer review program, discussing the AICPA implementation of its peer review integrated management application, or PRIMA system, revision of a framework to evaluate the peer reviewer population in California, and upholding procedures for revisiting the effectiveness of out-of-state administering entities and that impact on the California Mobility Program. Based on our oversight, the PROC concluded that the AICPA peer review program functions effectively in accordance with the standards adopted by the Board of Accountancy, and the PROC recommends that the CBA adopt the 2018 annual report and continue to provide guidance to our committee concerning oversight activities. I'd like to turn this discussion item back over to the President. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes.
I have a couple of questions. Thank you, and this is a great report from the PROC.
I need to turn on my microphone, too. So, in the message from the chair, you mentioned the active monitoring of the PRIMA system for, I guess, timing and monitoring how the process is complete. So how does the PROC do that, actively monitor PRIMA? I was just curious.
A couple of ways. One, we receive regular reports on the effective functioning of the PRIMA system. Attending each of our meetings are members of the California Society of CPAs who administer the program, and we get regular reports on how that's functioning. We also, in our activities where we go on-site to the California Society, we log in through that PRIMA system to look at different reports, see how peer reviewers are functioning timely. Additionally, we also sit in and observe meetings via telephone of the AICPA's peer review board and hear what the findings are, current problems, what revisions, excuse me, to the system are underway, and complaints that are received, those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you. And one more. On page 9, there's a sentence there that indicates that the AICPA subject matter experts, called SMEs, identified a higher number of non-conforming peer review engagements than peer reviewers. So the oversight of peer reviewers, those oversight, special matters, expert people are having more findings than the peer reviewers. Can you speak to that for us?
I can a little bit. That has not been an item of particular attention by our committee. I will note that there is some discussion amongst the different participants in the entire peer review process, both those that administer the process as well as peer reviewers, as well as folks there on the peer review board at the AICPA as to how that system and process is functioning, where subject matter experts go in and have targeted reviews of certain engagements. There are a lot of different variables that cause different findings. The objective of a peer reviewer is, as Mr. Franzella reported on a system review, is to give an opinion on the overall quality control process of a particular accounting firm, where the objective of a subject matter expert that's oversighting a particular engagement may differ from that, in that they're not trying to give an opinion of an overall quality control process. They're looking at a particular engagement. And so that is just one of many things that could create those variability in those findings.
Does that warrant the PROC's looking into, in your opinion, looking into further, an area we should be concerned about? I mean, what is your take on that?
I do think that it would be a good thing. It may be difficult for us to be able to identify. I don't know that the AICPA can give us specific information on those things targeted to California. It may be we would be looking at it and reporting back to the board in a general sense, overall, this is what they're finding throughout the United States.
I think a primary question we could be asking the AICPA is why they elect to look at these reports in two different kinds of sets of standards, in as much as peer review has a design to look at the system versus this model for the SMEs is looking at a specific report, and it raises questions when they then report later that they're finding a high volume of non-conforming reports that the peer reviewers aren't finding. It seems to create this, maybe it undercuts the peer review program, but it looks like the standards are juxtaposed. They're not doing the same, they're not looking at the same kind of set of standards. So it'd be more, maybe that could be one of the areas we can start with our inquiries, is why is the ACPA bringing in these subject matter experts, tasking them with something different than what a peer reviewer is being asked to do, so we can better understand what the purpose of what they're trying to accomplish and why they're reporting it in such a way.
Right, and so that's something the ACPA should respond to and answer and give us, and I'm sure they would be quite willing to do that, rather than the PROC trying to dig into something that's
Agreed.
that's really kind of a backward approach to trying to figure that out.
That would certainly probably be the best way to start, at least, into that.
I got
Okay.
in the annual report, page 17, there's table 2 that shows statistics of number of peer reviews by year and a steady decline each year leading up to the current. How should I be thinking about that? Is it less peer reviews are needed or being requested? Or is it that we're building up a backlog of needed peer reviews that haven't made their way through? And I know we've got the PRIMA issues that cause some level of consternation in the short term. I don't know if it impacted 17 or not, but
Again, there are a lot of factors by that. Some of it, I don't think, we have not gotten reports, our committee has not gotten reports from the state that there is a significant backlog that would cause a substantive change in those percentages. However, there are a lot of different things. That the trend towards firms being consolidated together, that has been a significant factor in the state of California. And so what may happen in those cases is where a medium-sized firm, a large regional or a national firm absorbs several smaller firms, they're now being performed in one peer review, which is probably reported at the national level, rather than being peer reviewed within the state of California. Their headquarters now changed to back east somewhere or something like that. That's one of the factors. There are probably a number of factors that affect that.
and then you probably heard the CPC discussion earlier, but certainly looking forward to the PROC's input on the AICPA's handbook changes and what have you as you evaluate that at your next meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions?
We're just looking for a motion from the board to adopt the report.
I move to adopt the 2018 annual report as presented.
I second.
Okay. Public comment? With no public comment? Vote?
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
George Familet.
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
And Alicia Burhow.
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay. We on item 5C4?
5C4? Yeah, 5C4, thank you. This is discussion and possible action regarding the progress of the development of a proposed framework to monitor the California peer reviewer population. The CBA is being asked to provide feedback and approve a letter to the AICPA related to a framework to monitor the peer review population, which the letter is in attachment 7 to your materials. As members will know, we've been working to try to collect statistical information from the AICPA for about 18 months to 2 years now on trying to get a handle on what the peer reviewer population looks like in California. And you have a number of letters back and forth between staff, board presidents, the chair of the PROC and the AICPA on some of that information. So basically, overall, the information we receive is insufficient and does not allow the CBA and the PROC the ability to comprehensively assess the peer reviewer population. In some of the letters, the data received has raised concerns related to the population. For example, the ratio of peer reviewers, which is included in attachment 1A, the AICPA notes that the national average of firms to peer reviewers is 14.65 to 1 on a national level, yet in California, it's more than double, sitting at 30.25 to 1. Additionally, the letter notes that as part of the questionnaire that was disseminated to 350 peer reviewers, I believe back in 2014 or 15, nearly one half the peer reviews were performed by individuals 61 and older, and that 40% did not intend to retire by 2020. The AICPA noted that as a positive. However, this means that 60% do intend to retire, so staff see it as kind of an indicator that the population is tending to move away from peer review. So as peer review is a condition of license renewal, and the decrease in peer reviewer population could create potential barriers for licensees to timely find a peer reviewer, we believe it's important that we continue to maintain an active presence on understanding that peer reviewer population and really getting statistics that are going to help us assess it. And at this stage, the prior letters were requesting what kind of data was available at the AICPA and seeking that information. The approach being presented for CBA consideration today with this item and the accompanying letter seeks to have the AICPA collect the data that the board and the PROC believe is important to monitoring the peer reviewer population and collect specific data points that will provide information on which to assess this population. So again, it's just a switch in terms of no longer requesting what you have, but instead saying, here's what we would like to have come before us so we can properly start assessing the peer reviewer population. The letter further requests that the AICPA work with the CBA to develop a timeline that accounts for this development of a framework to monitor the California peer reviewer population and allow the AICPA time to initiate the data collection process, hopefully by early 2020 and beginning to be able to report to the board peer reviewer population beginning 2021. The timeline should consider the necessary time for research and system development to generate statistics being requested and time to develop a report to be delivered to the CBA and PROC. On page 3 of your item are the minimum data points that staff believe the AICPA should collect and report onto the CBA. These data points were presented to the PRC at its meeting last month. The PRC concurred with the data points and actually provided feedback on further refining the information, which is what members have before them today. In the letter, the CBA is requesting acknowledgement from the AICPA related to its willingness to collect the data and if it cannot meet the CBA's request, to have a representative come to the May meeting to discuss with the CBA. So at this time, staff recommend the CBA approve the proposed CBA follow-up letter to the AICPA and delegate authority to the CBA president to work with staff in making necessary revisions to the letter. With that, I'm happy to turn it back over to President Pamela and answer any questions members may have.
Anybody have questions? Mr. Franzella?
I'm looking at all the letters going back and forth. I mean, is another letter the right way to go here? I mean, I'm just trying to get a sense of, what's going to change.
I think the purpose of the prior letters was trying to solicit information that was available to them, and during the course of those communications, it became abundantly clear they either didn't have the information, weren't collecting certain information that we believed were probably important for us assessing it, believing that they potentially had this information. So this letter approach really isn't anymore about, hey, what do you have, AICPA? It's here's what the Board of Accountancy wants, and here's what the minimum data points we are looking to collect. And if you're not able to do this, you need to come before this body and explain to us why you're unable to provide us this information. So that while it is still letter generated, it's no longer requesting them to report statistics back to us in this letter. It's, we want these statistics. Please explain to us why you couldn't or could.
But I also see their comments that even if they collected the information, they may not be willing to share it with the organization for the same reasons NASBA had for not sharing stuff they get from state boards and, all these confidentiality reasons. So it seems like that'll be a tough issue to overcome. This whole question on retirement, I had a hard time figuring out, there might be firms that are doing these peer reviews, and they may have multiple partners within those firms that carry out those peer reviews on behalf of that firm. I couldn't tell if these statistics on retirements were at the individual partner level, or if this was, so let's say 5 partners are retiring from firm X, and so that's in the statistics, but that firm is developing the capability to keep doing these peer reviews. Does that really change the capacity question?
It does, in as much as a lot of the peer reviews that we see happen at this level are done by small firms or sole practitioners in a lot of instances. And in some of the letters, I believe the one that has a very kind of detailed response, like one peer reviewer performed one review, and you kind of go through that letter, you'll see that a very small number of peer reviewers do a very high volume of peer reviews. And if one of those individuals were to cease offering the services going forward, it'll have a dramatic effect. So it's not just one person leaving, it's the person themselves who left, who could potentially have a dramatic impact. And that's part of the reason why we asked the questions in the way we did, which are not only how many are performing in these particular areas, which ones are the high volume performers, and what impact will it have if one of these individuals leave. And again, I understand the confidentiality requirement in terms of whether or not they're willing to share, and I think that's part of the dialogue we want to have with them, is how can they produce information that would still allow them to maintain confidentiality about a particular person, but provide important information so that we can understand if these 1 or 2 people leave, what kind of domino effect does that have to the process.
Has there been dialogue between all these letters, or has it just been letters?
It's mostly been letters because we're not getting a lot of communication back and forth.
Okay.
A lot of the communication we actually get is done at the PROC level with Cal CPA. But Cal CPA, while we direct our letter at Cal CPA because they're an administering entity and they perform a lot of the rubber meets the road stuff, all of the statistical, programmatical elements of it have been kind of contracted within the AICPA, and Cal CPA no longer provides any statistical information really to us. It's all coming from the AICPA. And while we have an active dialogue as best we can with the AICPA, it's not, as you can see in some of our letters, I think it took 3 extra months to get a response back to a prior letter.
My last question is, how do you define California reviewer population? I mean, and should we clarify that in what you send, right? Is it just somebody based in California, or is it somebody willing to do services in California from a neighboring state? I mean, how do you define it?
I generally look at anybody who is approved by the Cal CPA to do the peer review. And that could be somebody from a neighboring state. And I'm happy to listen to the AICPA provide some of that information to us, because I believe that is an important component, that if this starts to spread out more, that there's people who aren't just based in California who are offering the services, that it could be somebody in Nevada. Understanding the totality of that peer reviewer population is important. But at this point, we don't even know how to distinguish necessarily how they look at somebody who's a national peer reviewer, a California peer reviewer, somebody who does peer reviews in multiple states. So I think that dialogue with them would go a long way in developing these data points.
And it has been reported to us by the California Society of CPAs that while it's certainly possible that you would have a reviewer from Ohio do a review of a California firm, statistically, that's a very, very small, insignificant percentage of the total peer reviews that are being done on California firms.
Do you need a motion for this thing?
Yes, that would be much appreciated.
I move approval of the letter, although I would ask that you consider broadening your California reviewer population bullet there a little bit, to be open to the idea of it being not just California-based institutions.
Absolutely.
Do we have a
Second.
second? Okay.
And I understand that motion to include that the president to be able to work with staff on this.
Sure,
Yes.
sure. I don't know if I trust them to do that, but
Public comment? Lots of comments. Okay, I guess we'll call for a vote.
Okay, Alicia Burhout. Yes. Jose Campos.
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan.
Yes.
George Family.
Yes.
Mary Gion.
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar.
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
And Mark Silverman.
Yes. Motion passes. Okay. Next item we will have up is item 8, report of the enforcement chief, Mr. Franzello.
Thank you. So item 8A is the enforcement activity report. It's as of January 31st, 2019, and represents 7 months' worth of data. I'll highlight just a few pages and items in this, and I'm happy to then answer questions as members may have. So looking at page 1, the complaints received, the CBA received just over 1,700 complaints during those first 7 months, which is a 38% increase compared to the same period for the prior fiscal year. Members may recall on this page also, we used, for the last 2 enforcement activity reports, we were reporting a very high level information on unlicensed activity. Staff have created a new section within this report that members will have seen that provides added detail on unlicensed activity, which I'll cover in just a minute. Moving on to investigations and investigations pending, which are pages 3 to 5 of the year. The CBA has seen an 11% decrease in the average days to close on its investigation since the last report. Further, when compared to the close of last fiscal year, there's been a 32% decrease. Of the just over 2,100 cases staff have closed this fiscal year, over 75% were completed in the first 6 months, and 90% were completed within a year. On page 4, members will note enforcement presently has 790 cases in its pending investigations inventory. There are 36 cases over 24 months, which is down slightly from the last report, which was 39. Moving on to discipline, the discipline-related information can be found on pages 6 to 9 of your report. Looking at the AG referrals, the CBA has referred 42 matters to the AG this year and has filed 37 pleadings, with the vast majority being accusations. On page 7, the CBA has 65 matters pending at the AG's office, with 4 over 24 months. Again, one case is a matter which has been on the CBA's enforcement activities report for several years and is in the court system. Another took effect last month. One is set for hearing, and finally, the AG's office was assisting in an investigation on a 4th one. The CBA has acted on 41 matters through the first 7 months, though an additional 8 or 9, I believe, took effect in the middle of last month. Moving on to citations, as I've previously noted, there has been a sharp increase in the number of citations issued for this year. Through the first 7 months, we've already more than doubled the number of citations issued compared to the prior fiscal year. 75% of these citations are for a specific violation related to the minimum yearly CE requirement, commonly known as the 20 and 12. Moving on to page 11 of the report, staff have included a new section to provide increased information on unlicensed activities to members, as this was a request of the board during its strategic planning back in September. So during the first 7 months of the fiscal year, the CBA had received 200 complaint types of unlicensed activity. Ironically, we've also closed 200 investigations pending. The numbers they just happen to have occurred that way. These do include investigations that were folded over from a prior fiscal year. To date, we've issued 13 citations, closed 206 matters in which compliance was received, and referred 3 matters to district attorney or local law enforcement. I'd like to note that shortly after issuing this activity report, staff received information on a recent criminal conviction secured by the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office related to a matter staff previously had referred. We received a complaint that a licensee the CBA had once disciplined and revoked via default decision was continuing to practice. Staff requested the Department of DCA's Division of Investigation assist in investigating whether or not the individual continued to practice. At the end of that investigation, the Division of Investigation provided a report that included evidence of practice, which resulted in staff sending a referral to the LA District Attorney's Office for consideration and filing of criminal charges. In May of last year, the DA filed charges for violation of various business and professions code. And on February 19th of this year, the individual was convicted of misdemeanor violations of Business and Professions Code sections 5050, which is practice without a permit, practice without a permit, and 5055, title of a certified public accountant. He was ordered to pay restitution to the CBA in the amount of just over $7,000 and was placed on summary probation for 3 years. So the activities the board does perform in the unlicensed area do result in either compliance, and when a local district attorney believes there's sufficient consumer harm, them taking it on as well. The final area of the report I'd like to highlight is on pages 12 and 13 related to probation monitoring. Presently, we have 166 individuals on probation and are up to date on our probation orientations. We've also noted 23 probation violations, with the vast majority being cost reimbursement and submitting quarterly reports. I'd like to extend my appreciation to Member Corrigan for sitting in on a probation orientation at the last EAC meeting. And that concludes my report, and I'd like to turn discussion back over to President Femmelette, and happy to answer any questions members may have.
Any questions from any of the board members? Okay.
Thank you.
We will move on. Next item is 9. We're going to do the licensing report. Ms. Pierce, thank you.
I want to start the report by acknowledging that Gina Sanchez accepted a position at the Department of Consumer Affairs, and we are working on the recruitment for her position. We wish her a lot of success in her new role. Starting on page 1 of the report, I just want to highlight that the CBA's credit cards payment system is doing great. We've received very positive feedback from stakeholders regarding this new payment option, and we are looking forward to expanding that to examination and licensure candidates sometime during 2019. Moving on to stats for the licensing division, the snapshot on page 1 provides a quick overview of the workload that's going on. On page 2, you can see the volume of examination applications that have been processed, and we are presently processing these in under 30 days, and as of the email I just got, we're at 22 days today. So really making progress in getting those reviewed and approved as quickly as possible. Also, at a member's request, we included information on deficient applications for the examination unit. As of the end of January, there was 425 first-time applications where there was a deficiency. The most common deficiencies include transcripts not having a conferral date on the degree or a shortage of accounting limits. Under the initial licensing information that's referenced on pages 3 and 4, We could also continue to process these applications in under 30 days as well. As of the email this morning, we are at 23 days from date of receipt to initial review. The most common deficiencies include missing some of the core education requirements, such as the accounting ethics course, and incomplete applications, which are the easier deficiencies to resolve because we work with the applicant to remedy those very quickly. License renewal information is referenced on page 5. Staff did conduct a review on the volume of renewal applications, and the current year is slightly higher than compared to the prior 2 years. That was a question that was raised at the January meeting, and so we're pretty consistent, if not just slightly higher than prior years. Population statistics on page 6 reflect a continual growth in our licensee population. And just wanted to draw your attention to attachment 1, which are 2 new handouts that were developed. This is the start of what will be an overhaul, if you will, of the licensing division's reference materials for applicants for examination and licensure. Staff worked with NASBA's communication unit and develop these flyers, and we are going to use these to email out to individuals who contact our office who want to get an overview of what the examination or application requirements are, or what the process is to go through the application process. These are going to be up on our website if they're not already, and then we are going to also have these available at our various outreach events. And then we have also included the NASBA CPA exam performance summary as attachment 2, which reflects information for the 4th testing window in 2018. And that concludes my report, and I would be happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Any questions from board members?
No, just comment. I mean, I like the feel of the new report, the licensing activity report, and I thought this flyer was very nicely done.
Great.
Yeah, I did mention that in page, I guess, is that the 1 of 2 on the attachment 2? Second to the last page, how's that? I was looking at the performance for the exam passing rates, and they say the top 3 jurisdiction, the highest pass rate was Virgin Islands, Utah, and Wisconsin. So where's California stand?
Not that high.
Not that high.
But it's a uniform test, right?
Yeah, but you don't have uniform students.
Well, it's on here, right? It's on attached 25th.
I know. I'm just wondering why we're so low.
It's not 55th.
Yeah, universities too.
Yeah.
We may have to ask the representatives of one of our state university systems those questions with that. And accounting curriculum, I guess, is the right place. Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Okay, with that, we're going to move on to item 10, and we're going to have the subcommittee reports. And so the first report we're going to do is, oh, sorry, I might have jumped ahead here in my trying to get things done. We're going to do a report on, item 9B on updating the California Board of Accountancy online application process. Sorry.
I'll try to keep this brief. Executive Officer Bowers has probably shared information that we have been working on developing an online application for initial licensure. And we are getting very close to launching this new option for candidates. For those of you who may not know, we presently have an online application process to apply for the exam, where candidates create an online account, they complete their application, they generate a remittance form, and then that is sent in with their transcripts and their fee to the board office. and then their application is processed, and then the candidates are able to access their client account to check the status of their application and also view their CPA exam scores. So the online application is basically going to be a continuation of this system. When they pass the CPA exam, they will receive a notification in their client account, and they will be able to access a link that will bring them to this new system, which does not have a very exciting name right now. It's LAPS compared to some of our other ones like Bob and Fred, but it's a work in progress. So they'll get the link and they'll be able to access the online application. And any information that was in their client account for the exam will get transferred over. They'll have an opportunity to go through that information, verify it, or change it if it needs to be. Educational information, that will also transfer over, and they'll be able to add in any information with regard to education, if they're licensed in other states, which they're most likely not if they just passed the exam, but they'll be able to do the complete application on this online system. One of the other things that is kind of cool is, as you may be aware, we do an expedite process if they are in the military or a spouse or domestic partner of a military. And so that's one of the initial questions that we ask, so that when they're completely filling out the exam and they submit it, that gets printed in red on a remittance form with a barcode, and then when that comes into our office, it's automatically flagged as an expedite, and we can get those rushed through very quickly. We are anticipating rolling this out hopefully within the next 30 days or so. We're still working out some of the kinks. I'm going to be emailing out to the members a PowerPoint or some screenshots from it, just so you can get an idea of what it looks like, and also sharing it with stakeholders. And the other part of this would be incorporating in the payment option for exam and licensure applicants, but that'll probably be a second phase of the system later on this year. So I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Said you're getting close. Is there an intended testing phase for this additional feature?
Yes, I would say right now we're working on the, I don't know the IT term, but the internal part. We've got the external facing designed. So right now we're doing testing on the internal side on how we're going to be processing it in the various status codes. So we'll probably be ready for some, testing. We've been doing some testing with kind of dummy accounts through it, but we'll be ready probably, I would say, within the next 2 weeks to 30 days is kind of my estimate.
And the access to that site or that link is only once they pass all the exams, or are they able to do anything with their initial license prior to passing the exam, right? Like there's stuff you have to upload and that you can start probably getting in there.
Right now, it's going to be for, when it gets launched, it'll be for applicants who've taken the CPA exam in California, as a California candidate, strictly for that. They'll get the link after they've passed the exam. In terms of uploading various documents and materials, that will probably be an option later on in the project, not at kickoff. They still do need to, until we implement the credit card payment option, they're still going to need to mail money and transcripts, official transcripts in. So we're going to be different phases of the project where maybe we'll be able to enable them to upload or connect with schools to get, a secure transfer of transcripts.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. Now moving on to item 10, we're going to do the report of the committees from this morning. And we're going to start first with the Committee on Professional Conduct. Mr. Jacobson, you're going to read out the report?
Thank you. Our first item of discussion is listed as A2 under number 10 on your agenda. Discussion of possible action regarding continuing professional education reciprocity. Staff reported that the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy developed the Uniform Accounting Act, or the UAA, model rules as part of its effort to update and promote uniformity in the regulatory schemes governing the practice of accountancy in the various jurisdictions. Although many of the CBA regulations mirror the UAA model rules, the California Board of Accountancy maintains independence in the establishment of its requirements in California. Staff noted that UAA Model Rule 6-7 establishes provisions for continuing education reciprocity, which allows CPAs to meet only the CE requirements of the state where their principal place of business is located. Staff stated that California is one of 24 jurisdictions that does not presently have CU reciprocity. The committee discussed the value of continuing to require ethics and regulatory review CE courses if the board adopted a CE reciprocity policy. So the CPC recommends, and does so as a fully formed motion, that this board direct staff to continue researching this topic and place a discussion on a future CBA meeting menu. Agenda. I'm hungry.
Second.
Well, it's already done.
Never mind.
So that is a fully formed motion, except for
Okay,
the menu part.
So no second needed, so comments from the public? Comments from other members? Okay, with that.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Fully formed, yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Mary Jion,
Yes.
George Pamela.
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
and Alicia Burhow.
Yes.
Next, listed as 10A3, discussion of possible action to provide comments to the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy on proposed revisions to the Uniform Accountancy Act's model rules published January of 2019 relating to the administration of peer review. Staff reported that in 2004, the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, or NASBA, developed the UAA model rules as part of its effort to update and promote uniformity in the regulatory schemes governing the practice of accountancy in the various jurisdictions. The most recent version of the UAA model rules was released in January of 2019, with a comment deadline of June 30, 2019. The NASBA proposed revisions relate to various aspects of peer review programs. Staff presented a proposed comment letter for the CBA, to review and approve, and suggested that the CBA may wish to explore possible changes to the CBA regulations related to the submission of peer review documents and attest documentation retention. So the committee recommends, again as a fully formed motion, that this board approve the proposed comment letter and direct staff to perform the necessary research related to the submission of peer review documentation and attest documentation and retention, and report back at a future CBA meeting.
Okay. Public comment? Are there comments from the board? Okay.
Alicia Burhow,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Pamela,
Yes.
Mary Jion,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
and Mark Silverman.
Yes. The third item discussed, listed as number 4 on your agenda, is discussion of possible action on providing comments to the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants regarding revisions to Chapter 3 of the Peer Review Oversight Hymnbook. Staff stated that the purpose of this agenda item is to provide the CBA an opportunity to consider providing comments to the American Institute of CPA's revision to Chapter 3 of the Peer Review Oversight Hymnbook. Staff noted that NASBA and various state boards of accountancy have raised concerns with the content of Chapter 3 of the Oversight Handbook and recommended that the CBA's Peer Review Oversight Committee, or PROC, review the matter and report back at the May 2019 CBA meeting. So the committee recommends that the CBA direct the Peer Review Oversight Committee to evaluate the revisions to Chapter 3 of the revised Peer Review Oversight Handbook and report on its findings at the May 2019 CBA meeting, and that recommendation is a fully formed motion.
Okay. Comments from the public? Other board member comments? Okay, let's have a vote.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
and Alicia Burhow.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. Okay, so we're going to have Nancy present the Legislative Committee report.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you. Oh, sure. You're going to owe me big time for this.
Oh,
I'm so glad you're doing this for me, thanks. That's okay. So following the agenda, item B2 had to do with the CBA 2019 legislative tracking chart, which was a written report only. XB3, review and approval of responses to questions from the Sunset Background Paper, proposed changes to the Business and Professions Code related to the CBA's fees.
Is your microphone on by any
Oh,
chance?
it is on. It
Just
is-
closer,
it is
yeah, just-
closer.
just-
It's on.
It's
yes.
not that sensitive.
Getting harder to
And-
hear, I
it's
think.
getting harder to, it's the hearing.
I need to check my ears.
Okay, Business and Professions Code related to the CBA's fees and consideration of possible position on Assembly Bill 1521. Staff reported that the purpose of this item was to provide the CBA the opportunity to approve draft responses to questions posed by the legislature as part of the sunset review process and take a position on AB 1521, the bill to extend the CBA's sunset date until January 1st, 2024. Staff noted that the item would provide the CBA the opportunity to discuss options to expedite an increase to the CBA's fees. Staff pointed out that in the CBA's proposed responses to its sunset questions, it contains language related to a change in the CBA's fee structure. Further, the proposed responses indicate agreement with the legislature's recommendation to not return to a substantial relationship standard for certain financial crimes described in AB 2138 and withdraw the CBA's request related to the term directly and adversely related. Legislative Committee recommends the CBA approve the draft responses to the legislature's sunset review questions. And since this is a fully formed motion, it doesn't require a second. And I'll turn it back to Mr. President.
Questions from the public? Other board members? Okay, let's have a vote.
Alicia Burhow,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
and Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay.
Okay, so continuing, with regard to Assembly Bill 1521, staff stated the analysis is drafted based upon the amendments that are proposed to be included within the bill. The proposed amendments include the CBA's requests related to the electronic distribution of the update newsletter, collecting email addresses from applicants and licensees, and a non-substantive omnibus amendment. The proposed amendments include the CBA's requests related to the AB 2138, except it does not include the removal of the term directly and adversely related. CPC recommends the CBA, the LC recommends the CBA approve and support a support position on AB 5021 and include in its position letter that it looks forward to collaborating on amendments to enable the CBA to have adequate revenue to fund its operations and maintain a prudent reserve. So it's a fully formed motion and just requires then a vote.
Okay. Comments from the public? Comments from board members? Have a vote?
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy, Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
George Pamela,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
and Alicia Verhow.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so continuing with item 10B4A, Senate Bill 51, Financial Institutions Cannabis. Staff stated that SB 51 would establish cannabis limited charter banks and cannabis limited charter credit unions to provide specific financial services to the cannabis industry. Staff recommended maintaining a watch position and did not take action on this item. Item XB4B, Senate Bill 53, Open Meetings. Staff indicated that SB 53 would subject state two-member advisory committees to the requirements of the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, which include publishing a 10-day meeting notice and agenda, opening the meeting to the public, recording the meeting, and publishing minutes. The LC discussed options that may help the CBA advocate for its position on the bill. Staff recommended the CBA maintain an opposed position on SB 53 and did not take an action on this item. Okay, so agenda item 10B5A, Assembly Bill 193, Professions and Vocations. Staff reported that AB 193 would require the DCA to conduct a comprehensive review of all licensing requirements for each profession regulated by a DCA board or bureau, and to identify unnecessary licensing requirements. The DCA would be required to begin its work by January 1st, 2021, and apply for any federal funds that are available to support this purpose. Staff noted that the bill also deletes certain licensing requirements related to the practice of barbering, cosmetology, and custom upholstery. LC recommends that the CBA approve a watch position on Assembly Bill 193. This was a fully formed motion, does not require a second. So we turn it back for the vote.
Comments from the public? Board members? Vote?
Alicia Verhow,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Pamela,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
and Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Okay. Agenda item 10B5B, Assembly Bill 312, State Government Administrative Regulations Review. Staff stated that AB 312 would require each state agency to, on or before January 1st, 2022, review all its legislation, all its regulations, identify any regulations that are duplicative, overlapping, inconsistent, or out of date, revise those identified regulations, and report its findings and actions to the legislature and governor. The LC recommends that the CBA approve a watch position on Assembly Bill 312. This is a fully formed motion. I turn it back to you.
Comments from the public? Board members? Vote?
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
George Pamela,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
and Alicia Verhow.
Yes.
Okay. Continuing on, agenda item 10B5C. This is Assembly Bill 476, Department of Consumer Affairs Task Force foreign-trained professionals. Staff indicated that AB 476 would require DCA to create a task force to study and issue a report regarding the licensing of professionals trained outside of the United States. The task force would be required to submit a report to the Legislature by January 1st, 2021, that identifies strategies to integrate foreign-trained professionals, state and national licensing regulations that potentially pose unnecessary barriers to practice, and best practices to integrate foreign-trained professionals into the workforce of other states. LC recommends that the CBA approve a watch position on Assembly Bill 476. This is a fully formed motion. I turn it to you for the vote.
Comments from members of the public? Board members? Let's have a vote.
Alicia Verhow.
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan.
Yes.
George Familet.
Yes.
Mary Jiang.
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Van Jacobson.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar.
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Abstain.
And Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Agenda item 10B5D, this is Assembly Bill 613, Professions and Vocations Regulatory Fees. Staff reported that AB 613 would authorize each board within DCA to increase, no more than once every 4 years, any fee authorized to be imposed by that board by an amount not to exceed the increase in the California Consumer Price Index for the preceding 4 years. The bill requires the DCA director to approve any fee increase proposed by a board, except under specified circumstances. AB 613 creates a new process that is separate and complementary to the CBA's existing procedure to change its fees. The LC recommends that the CBA approve a support position on Assembly Bill 613. This is a fully motion. I turn it to you for the vote.
Comment from the public? Board members? Vote?
Okay. Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Mary Jiang.
Yes.
George Familet.
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan.
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
And Alicia Verhow.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 10B5E, this is Assembly Bill 768, Professions and Vocations. Staff stated that, according to the author's staff, AB 768 will not be moving forward. Therefore, the LC did not take action on this item. Moving on to Agenda item 10B5F, Assembly Bill 802, Reports to the Legislature. According to staff, AB 802 would require state and local agencies to submit reports electronically and not by printed copy to designated legislative officials. For reports involving data collection or analysis, the bill would require a state agency to post all data used to generate the report on the agency's internet website at the time the report is posted. The LC recommends that the CBA approve a watch position on Assembly Bill 802. It's a fully formed motion. I turn it to you for the vote.
Comment from the public? Comment from board members? Let's have a vote.
Alicia Verhow.
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan.
Yes.
George Familet.
Yes.
Mary Jiang.
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar.
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
And Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Good, thank you. Agenda item 10B5G, this is Assembly Bill 931, State and Local Boards and Commission Representation Appointments. Staff stated that AB 931 requires, on or after January 1st, 2025, the composition of each state and local board and commission with appointed members to have a specified minimum number of women board members or commissioners based on the total number of board members or commissioners on that board. The bill makes related findings and declarations. Due to the current membership of the CBA, the bill would not impact the combination of the CBA. LC indicated that it wished to receive additional information regarding the implementation of AB 931, including what impacts it may have to the ability to achieve a quorum, and whether the author plans to include requirements related to ethnic diversity. The LC recommends that the CBA approve a watch position and issue a comment letter to the author requesting information related to the implementation of the bill. This is a fully formed motion. I turn it back to you for the vote.
Comments from the members of the public? Other board members? Let's have a vote.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Mary Gion,
Yes.
George Family.
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
And Alicia Verhow.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Agenda item 10B5H. This is Assembly Bill 1140, Tax Preparers Disclosures. Staff reported that AB 1140 would require a tax preparer registered with the California Tax Education Council to make specified written disclosures to a client who is applying for the California Earned Income Tax Credit that include the total amount of all fees being charged by the tax preparer and the amount of the tax refund the client would receive without paying the tax preparer's fees. The bill would also require a tax preparer to make the written disclosures available in English and certain non-English languages. The LC recommends that the CBA adopt a support position on Assembly Bill 1140. This is a fully formed motion. I turn it to you for the vote.
Comments from the members of the public? Other board members? Let's have a vote.
Alicia Verhow,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Family.
Yes.
Mary Gion,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
And Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 10B5J. This is Assembly Bill 1271, Licensing Examinations Report. Staff reported that this bill would require the Department of Consumer Affairs on or before January 1st, 2021, to provide a report to the Assembly Committee on Business and Professions and the Senate Committee on Business Professions and Economic Development that contains specified information relating to licensing examinations for each licensed profession and vocation under the department's jurisdiction. Staff reported that the author's office indicate that this is a spot bill and that staff will monitor it for future recommendations. The LC therefore recommends that the CBA adopt a watch position on Assembly Bill 1271 as a fully formed motion. I turn it back to you for the vote.
Questions from the member of the public? Other board members? Let's have a vote.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Mary Gion,
Yes.
George Family.
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
And Alicia Verhow.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 10B5J. Maybe the last one was I. I'm sorry, the last one was I. This is J. Assembly Bill 1521, Accountancy, California Board of Accountancy. This item was previously addressed under LC item 3. LC did not take action on this item, so we can continue. Agenda item 10B5K, Assembly Bill 1525, Cannabis, Financial Institutions. Staff reported that AB 1525 states that a certified public accountant or accounting firm does not commit a crime under California law solely for providing professional accounting services to persons licensed to engage in commercial cannabis activity. Staff indicated the bill also provides that authorized persons or businesses do not commit a crime under California law if they receive deposits or provide specified transportation or financial services to persons licensed to engage in commercial cannabis activity. This bill also includes certain requirements for cannabis businesses to share data with financial institution. The LC recommends that the CBA adopt a watch position on Assembly Bill 1525 as a fully formed motion. I turn this to you for the vote.
Comments from members of the public? Other board members? Let's have a vote.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Mary Gion,
Yes.
George Family.
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan.
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
And Alicia Verhow.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 10B5L, Assembly Bill 1545, Civil Penalty Reduction Policy. Staff reported that this bill would require a state agency to assist a small business as defined in complying with all statutes and regulations administered by the state agency and in any enforcement action by the state agency. The bill would require a state agency to establish a policy by December 31st, 2020 that provides for the reduction of civil penalties for violation of regulatory or statutory requirements by a small business under appropriate circumstances. The LC recommends that the CBA adopt a watch position on Assembly Bill 1545. It's a fully formed motion. I turn it to you for the vote.
Comments from members of the public? Other board members? Let's have a vote.
Alicia Burhow,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
and Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Okay. Agenda item 10B5M, Senate Bill 601, State Agencies Licenses Fee Waiver. Staff stated that Senate Bill 601 would authorize a state agency that issues any business license to reduce or waive any required fees for licensure, renewal of licensure, or the replacement of a physical license who was displaced by a declared emergency. A representative from the author's office, Senator Morrell, spoke to the LC through a conference call and urged the CBA to support SB 601. Therefore, LC recommends that the CBA adopt a support position on Senate Bill 601 as a fully formed motion. I turn it to you for the vote.
Comment from the members of the public? Comment from other board members? Let's have a vote.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
and Alicia Burhow.
Yes.
Okay, last item. Review and possible consideration of positions on legislation the California Board of Accountancy is monitoring. I have my report to go next. Remembering that. Okay. Staff reported that items A through P are bills being monitored by staff and include spot bills and bills related to the cannabis industry and did not take action on these items. And that concludes the report. Yeah.
My voice would not have held out, thank you.
This is your hazing.
I think I'm being like punished or something. I'm not sure what it is.
Okay, so I guess we'll continue with
Continue
the
talking.
enforcement program committee.
Okay, endurance.
Oregon.
This is endurance. Okay, so we met this morning, as you know, and we had a discussion and possible action to initiate a rulemaking to amend Title 16, California Code of Regulations, Section 98, Disciplinary Guidance and Model Orders, Section 99, Substantial Relationship Criteria, and Section 99.1, Rehabilitation Criteria for Denials, Suspensions, Revocations, Restorations, Reduction of Penalty, and to adopt Title 16, California Code of Regulations, Section 99.2, Directly and Adversely Financial Crime Criteria. Staff reported on proposed changes to Title 16, California Regulations, Section 98, Disciplinary Guidance and Model Order, Section 99, Substantial Relationship Criteria, and Section 99.1, Rehabilitation Criteria for Denials, Suspensions, Revocations, Restorations, Reduction of Penalty, and to adopt a new regulation, Section 99.2, Directly and Adversely Financial Crime Criteria. Staff noted that the language for the disciplinary guidelines and CBA regulations sections 98, 99, and 98.1 were originally considered by the CBA at our last meeting. Staff further noted Section 99.2 on directly and adversely financial crime criteria is a new section for the CBA's consideration. Mr. Jacobson provided his input on staff proposed text in CBA regulations section 99 regarding substantial relationship criteria related to subsection B4, specifically the term personal judgment. The EPOC moved to initiate a rulemaking to 1, approve the amended regulatory text of the Disciplinary Guidelines and Model Orders 10th edition, 2, approve the amended regulatory text in CBA Regulations Sections 98, 99, and 99.1. 3, approve the proposed regulatory text and adopt CBA Regulations Section 99.2. 4, direct staff to submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. And 4, if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for hearing. So this is a fully formed message for consideration by the board.
Thank you. Comments from the members of the public? Comments from other board members?
Yes. I feel I'll be brief because this was discussed quite a bit this morning, but I do want to reiterate and that what was mentioned, personal judgment. This is Section 99 to your purple handout, and it in a nutshell, this subjects licensees and proposed licensees to denial, suspension, or revocation of a certificate or permit for professional misconduct. And one of the things under this to consider for professional misconduct is personal judgment. And I have proposed that the remainder of the regulation is not only fine, it's excellent. It says the portion of it that talks about personal judgment says that sound professional judgment should be considered. And I think that's the only thing that the law allows to be considered. This is about implementing AB 2138. AB 2138 doesn't mention personal judgment. At our last meeting of this committee, the one previous to today, I asked for citations showing that personal judgment has been used in the definition.
Mr. Jacobson, can I just interrupt? Because we're repeating everything that the board's already consumed in the committee session, and I would just maybe state what the objection might be, but not rehash everything that's already been through the committee deliberation.
I appreciate that. I know that Katrina wasn't here, and I want to make it brief, but give something of a presentation. I think I'm obligated to do that. I'm also obligated to say that I wrote a memo on this. It's right here for anyone who's a member of the board and who's a member of the public. Anyone who's a member of the public who has a disability regarding comprehending it, I'm happy to help out with. Anyways, the cases that were given to me and to the rest of the board are all healing arts cases, and the courts have time and time again said that healing arts cases healing arts professions are different, and they require a stricter standard and than other cases. There are other professions such as lawyer. Lawyers have there's a statute talking about moral turpitude. None of that exists regarding accountancy. None of that exists regarding accountancy. So I don't think that the cases are that were provided are applicable. And furthermore, as the case law has shown, that if people have to guess at what something means, and I think that personal judgment when it comes to accountancy, as opposed to professional judgment, requires a guess. And if it does require a guess, then then it's violative of due process. So my proposal was to remove the term personal judgment and just keep sound professional judgment. Elena had something from the wording from the pharmacy board that I also thought was appropriate. And so I suggest that one of those two things be adopted by the board, or sometime, somewhere down the road, after a lot of carnage, someone in a black robe is going to tell us that we're wrong.
Okay, so we have a motion, let's vote.
So fast. Katrina, only because you weren't here during this conversation, do you have any questions about, because I'm not going to do my whole spiel because everybody who was here heard it except for you. So I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to have any questions you may have answered before you vote.
Much appreciated. I just want to make sure I'm on the same page. The motion on the table is to approve the document as written. Your objection, it passed because it's before us, but you had voiced concerns about the wording.
That's correct.
Is that okay. So we still have a motion on the table.
Correct.
Was there a vote regarding your objection at the committee meeting that I was not at?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, that's correct,
So this is
and
our
it failed.
standing motion that has survived the debate.
Yes.
Is that correct?
In the
Correct.
committee.
In the committee. Thank you. Wonderful. Much appreciated. No more questions. Okay.
Vote.
Alicia Burhoff,
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Familet.
Yes.
Mary Jian,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
No.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
and Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, item 11, meeting minutes. This is the approval of the minutes. Can I
I
get a
move
motion to
adoption.
adopt?
I move adoption of item 11A, adoption of the minutes of the last CBA meeting. Can I combine them? I mean, and acceptance of the minutes at items 11B through G.
Second.
Second. We got a second?
Second.
Okay. All right. Let's, any comments?
Just to note, I have 2 non-substantive edits that I'll pass along to the
Shocking.
executive director later.
Shocking.
Okay.
You're so
Any
If
comments from the public?
I have a question. I can't vote on B because I was sick that day. So, does that mean, can we just make that a separate motion or something like that?
You can still vote on acceptance of minutes, I think, if you weren't there. It's
That's
the
staying.
adoption piece that I think is probably,
The only time you wouldn't be able to vote is, basically, the board is just accepting the minutes, not adopting them. So basically, it's the committee that adopts them, and then it gets sent over to the board, who says, oh, okay, thank you, we'll take them.
Thank you.
And it doesn't matter if you were not there that day.
Now you've raised questions. So I was not at the January meeting, so therefore I have to abstain from the whole packet.
Yes.
Perfect.
If they want to take it all as one, yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's vote.
Okay. Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Abstain.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Mary Jian,
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
yes.
and Alicia Burhoff.
Yes.
And motion passes. Okay. Other business? We're gonna, I guess, is it, Katrina's gonna talk about the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants?
Why, thank you. So to give a moderately brief report, I will mention that after I attend committee meetings, I do generally have a dialogue with the executive director just to do just to pass some information along. But the State Board Committee had a conference call on February 12th. There was much discussion about rolling out continuous testing nationally and how that was going. There are representatives from other state boards on that committee as well, and they gave updates on what's happening in their jurisdictions. The Content Committee had reports. They're actually seeking nominations for volunteers from national firms, academia, and business for that committee, which is the Content Committee in developing the CPA exam. There was an interesting comment that national pass rates of the exam were improving nationally. So none of this was specific to us, but I thought it was interesting to note that overall exam sections nationally were down. And so the discussion was from the AICPA was, is this the new norm? So I'd be curious to see if we see any reflection, any parallels in California as well. There was a content update as it is at each meeting, so in keeping with the sort of technology discussions about how the profession is evolving, I wanted to share that data analytics are in our blueprint already for the exam. And then the AICPA has released sample tests for candidates, and this is not a test preparation tool, but what it does is it allows familiarity and some pre-exam navigation so that the students coming into the exam are able to navigate that environment with a little bit more understanding of what it is. So that was kind of exciting. And there was mention about India as a future international testing location, which I thought was of interest. And with that, that concludes my report on the State Board Committee.
Okay.
Do you want me to move along? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and then you're going to do the NASBA.
I'll move along. So NASBA, I would give for the Regional Pacific Director report, I would share that there was a regional call on February 11th. So we had almost all jurisdictions in our region. So we had Alaska, Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, Guam, and the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands. And we also had the Director of Legislative Affairs from NASBA on the call to give updates, as well as a representative from the Communications Committee. There was a recap given on the NASBA January board meeting, and I would share with you, I was actually attending that. It was concurrent with this meeting in January, and there were just two items I would pass along to you as of sort of special note, is that there is a new task force to discuss the 150-hour educational requirement for initial licensure. So that is bubbling up from various states in concern about, is the 150-hour requirement, now that nationally I believe it's been adopted by everybody, is it resulting in the desired outcomes for students going through licensure? And the second item is that NASBA is launching their CPE audit service, which is an updated iteration of an audit tool that's being made available to state boards to facilitate compliance for licensees in terms of the CPE criteria. I would share with you that there is a Western Regional meeting for NASBA. That conference is June 18th through the 20th, and it will be held in Utah this year. There is a new board member orientation at this event. Some of the items on the agenda are the evolution of the profession, and so that is that pathway discussion about how does our profession bring technology into the fold a little bit more as we move forward. There will be discussion about peer review, which I think is very relevant given our conversations at this board meeting today. And there'll be discussion about the No-CLAR challenge, and that's the, I didn't write it down, the non-compliance with laws and regulations. So it's an international rule that is impacting United States certified public accountants, and the issue is how do boards protect the public without harming the professionals that are providing the services. So those are some of the content items that will be on the agenda for that meeting. And with that, that concludes my report of the Pacific Region Director.
Thank you. I guess we're going to do the staff responses to the focus questions for the State Board of Accountancy. Ms. Reed?
The purpose of this agenda item is to provide the CBA with staff proposed responses to the NASBA focus questions. The responses assist the NASBA regional directors with staying apprised of each state's policies, procedures, and recent activities. The CBA may make a motion to approve the attached focus questions or direct staff to make any changes prior to submitting the responses to NASBA. And at this time, I would like to turn it back over to President Pamela and would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions? Board members? Okay. I think the next item then, or the motion, okay. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the responses to the NASBA focus questions as presented.
Second.
Okay. Questions from the public, comments from the public, comments from other board members? Okay, let's have a vote.
Alicia Burhow? Yes. Jose Campos?
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Mary Gion?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell-Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
And Mark Silverman?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
No report.
All right.
Oh, she said no report.
Is there a bylaw report?
No report.
No report.
No report.
Nada.
No
She said it's a fully formed no report.
No report.
Okay.
accepted.
Okay, so closing business, public comments?
I have one comment. Ms. Nelson from the Department of Consumer Affairs, she's covering two board meetings here in San Diego, the Board of Accountancy and the Contractor State Licensing Board. So she was not able to make it, and she wants to send her apologies for not being in attendance. She did leave behind her notes for her presentation, and we'll make those available on the back table for the public and then have those available for members. Thank you.
Any agenda items for future board meetings? No agenda items? Okay, we're going to then proceed into closed session. Thank you very much. Okay, back in proceedings? Okay. Any comments, board members, public?
Oh, I recommend looking at the memo that was in your handout.
Okay. With that, we will adjourn.
And do it, it's tomorrow.